Good afternoon. Today is Monday, November the 24th. This is the next hearing regarding ordinance number, what is that, Casey? Give me that ordinance number. What is the ordinance number again? I used to have it written down by heart. This is the next hearing regarding ordinance number 1325-2025 as amended by Mayor Bibb. Once again, we are not taking legislative action today. This is for us to get subject matter expertise regarding ordinance number 1325-2025. This is the $100 million settlement that the mayor has negotiated with the Cleveland Browns franchise. I want to make sure that I level set what we're trying to accomplish today so that everyone is clear, okay? We've had the administration come to have a conversation with us about this stadium, and I'm going to ask in the meantime if Ms. Trevisano and if Mr. McNair would like to join us before our guests join us. But we've had the mayor that came and made the case himself. We've had members of the administration that have come to the table to express some of the details of the deal. Today, what we're going to do is bring subject matter experts. These are people that are external people that actually have reached out and have a stake in this conversation, let's put it that way. And we're bringing them here today so that we can ask questions on why people believe this is a good deal and why this is a good deal for Cleveland. And I want to level set. As sentimental as this is, and congratulations on the Browns on their win yesterday, and as sentimental as this is, I want to make this clear to this council and to this listening public. This is about how do we get the best deal for the city of Cleveland. This is about how we look at this and how do we actually come up with a strategy to make sure that Clevelanders can still have faith in its lakefront, can be made whole to increase or replace the revenue that we're going to lose when this venue goes out of town. How do we mitigate any losses that we might have with any other institutions that we've upheld, like convention centers, Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, as well as some of the other public investments that we made. And if they do believe that this is a good deal, we're going to have some people that are going to talk to us about how we can pivot to the future of the lakefront and try to make sure that Cleveland has a bright future ahead. So I want to make this clear. This is not about sentimental Browns. I know that I'm a passionate Browns fan, just like the rest of our city. I want to ask this council and I want to ask this administration that we look at this from a business deal standpoint. And today, we're going to have several people that we're going to hear from, and the administration is here as well. We do have the law director here in case there's any legal questions that he wants to answer. But in this order, we're going to hear these people. We're going to start out by hearing from my former boss and also the former chief of staff and the architect who actually did the deal, the past deal for the stadium, as well as involved with the putting together this deal, Ken Silliman. And I'm going to use one of his phrases because this is kind of why we're here today. Don't bring me a problem without bringing me a solution. And that's what we're trying to figure out today. So we're going to hear from Ken Silliman, who's actually written books about this as a subject matter expert and actually went to forums that was hosted by Councilman Brian Casey in the past. We're going to hear from the Greater Cleveland Partnership, which represents the corporate community. Baiju Shaw, who is the president and CEO, could not be here, but he sent our former economic development director at the city of Cleveland under Mayor Frank Jackson, David Ebersol, and the Greater Cleveland Partnership. And Mr. Ebersol is actually the one that looked at the numbers to see how this deal can actually still make sure that Cleveland is made whole. After we hear from Mr. Ebersol, we're going to hear from Mike Deemer. Michael Deemer represents the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, which is the official organization that represents all of the downtown business owners, apartment owners, restaurants, etc. So Mr. Deemer is going to come and give his opinions and talk about what he believes can happen and how this may impact the downtown business community. And then finally, the closer, to talk about vision and talk about moving forward and how this could look and how we could actually transform from a massive stadium that many of us myself, maybe not you guys, believe shouldn't have been built there in the first place. Really should have been built over by where the current Gateway complex is at. But however, we have a stadium there that's there now. Once again, this is a business conversation. This is not about everybody's feelings. Everybody's entitled to their feelings, but at the end of the day, I want this council and this administration to talk about the business case for why this transition can be helpful and can position Cleveland to continue to bring in revenue and be made whole in this conversation. So I hope everybody's clear. I really wanted to give it the context so everybody was clear to understand what we're trying to accomplish today. Before I bring up, I would like our guest, Mr. Silliman, if he could come up, and then Mr. Ebersol, if he could come up, and then, Mr. Silliman and Mr. Deemer, and then after Mr. Silliman and Mr. Deemer can join us at the table, I'm going to give Ms. Trevisano and also Director or Chief McNair an opportunity to make remarks while they come to the table.
Thank you, Council President Griffin. I just want to say again, thank you for your leadership and this council's leadership in this thorough vetting process. You have an excellent panel of experts before you today. So while Chief McNair, Chief Griffin, and I are here to support and to answer any questions that you need from us, we're really looking forward to you hearing from this expert panel today. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McNair.
Thank you, Council President. I'd only add, look, I continue to wish we were living in a world where the Cleveland Browns were investing in downtown Cleveland and a world-class lakefront, and that is not the world that we live in today, right? That was not a choice that anyone in either this body or the administration made. There are a lot of factors that have led us to where we are today, and I think that our focus is on how do we make the city of Cleveland the best that it can possibly be for now and for the future.
Thank you. Just before I allow our guests to go into their introductions, I do want to instruct council members, because of the lengthy schedule that we have today, I'm going to limit remarks for everyone to 10 minutes. Please do not repeat questions. And once again, we will have an opportunity either via our staff or via anyone else to have follow-up questions. But if you have burning questions that you would like us to answer, please do it within your 10-minute time frame, because I do have to be very, very efficient with today's meeting, okay? That being said, I am now going to ask Mr. Silliman if he can introduce himself, and then we're going to go ahead and take questions from Mr. Silliman, and then once we take questions from Mr. Silliman, we're going to excuse him because he does have to catch a flight out of town, and then we'll bring up our other guests so that they can go through presentations. Mr. Silliman, you have the floor.
Thank you,
And we can
Council
pass this out.
President.
Thank you. Thank you.
Make sure.
If we need more,
I'm
we'll
one
get-
short on that side, I think.
Ms. Jimenez, if you could make a couple more copies just in case we get other members that come in. Please proceed, Mr. Silliman.
Well, thank you, Council President and members of council. Sort of deja vu for me here today. I want to start by saying that it's close to 38 years since I started in the Cleveland Law Department in 1988. And for the audience, my name is Ken Silliman. I'm a retired City Hall veteran. When I started in 1988 in the Law Department, looking back on those 38 years, I can honestly say that this Brook Park Dome scheme is the single worst development deal for the city and the region in those 38 years, and nothing else is even close. As support for that, the city did an economic development study last November, and many of the points that I just made are made in that study. Secondly, Councilmember Casey organized a panel discussion last June of 2024, and he invited several of the foremost economists on sports facility financing to that session, and I think anyone who attended that session would agree that they made similar points. But That being said, I did watch Mayor Bibb's testimony before council several weeks ago. And I'm here to say that I agree with much of what Mayor Bibb said in defending his proposed $100 million settlement. I certainly agree that it was the $600 million gift from the state of Ohio that put the city basically behind the 8 ball. Secondly, I completely agree with Mayor Bibb that having studied both of the lawsuits and having some background in the lease language that was the basis of one of the lawsuits, that although I think particularly the lease breach case, the city had a very strong argument there. On both of the lawsuits, I concur with Mayor Bibb that the best outcome the city would get would be to delay the project and delay the move out of downtown Cleveland rather than prevent it altogether. So, furthermore, I concur on the timing of the settlement. I think it was the right time to come to terms, and with the dollar amount of the settlement, which I can speak to later on if there are questions. So I'm not going to second guess either the dollar amount or the timing of the settlement. But the city's commitments, as expressed in the term sheet that council received at that first meeting, go beyond the actual dismissal of the lawsuits. And that's my primary reason for reaching out to the council today. Specifically, term sheet sections 2E and 2F could undermine future infrastructure projects in the city of Cleveland. Now, how does that happen? It's sort of a complicated explanation, which I'll get to. But essentially, those two terms obligate the city to use best efforts to support Brook Park's public safety, utilities, and other infrastructure projects. Now, in the memo that I passed out to the council, you'll see a quote from the city's attorney in this matter, Jones Day. It was not specific to this particular situation. It's actually several years ago. But that law firm basically opined that you should generally avoid best efforts commitments when you're signing a contract or an agreement of any sort. And the language speaks for itself. I won't go into that. But here's how I make the connection between City of Cleveland projects and the Brook Park best efforts language. As most council members know, when the city is doing an infrastructure project, we're usually seeking either federal or state funding, and there's usually a competitive selection process where our project is put in a competition with projects from other parts of the region, other parts of the state. So, in my view, when you're committing to best efforts for the Brook Park infrastructure, I could see a scenario down the road where the city might have a very important neighborhood infrastructure project that gets thrown in the same hopper with a Brook Park infrastructure project. And in that case, could the Browns and the Browns attorneys kind of hold the city's feet to the fire and say, you committed to best efforts, not reasonable efforts, best efforts, and therefore, in this round of competition, you need to put your weight behind the Brook Park project rather than the city project. You know, and as long as that best efforts language remains in the term sheet, you have that possibility. Now, if that was not the intent when the settlement agreement was crafted, then it's, to me, a fairly easy matter to amend the language to reflect exactly what was intended. And to that end, at the tail end of my memo, I suggest how you could modify sections E, and I'm recommending that you delete section F in its entirety. And you have my suggestions for the specific language there. I'll conclude my initial presentation with really supporting what the council president said at the outset. I've been very clear what I think about this project in Brook Park and its impact on the city and the region. But when the state made the decision that it made and sent $600 million unwarranted dollars from the state's unclaimed funds to a project that helps neither the city nor the region, it basically put the city behind the 8 ball. And anyone who cares about the future of the city has to look beyond your feelings about the Brook Park project and say, okay, how do we deal with the consequences of this project? And to do that, again, Council President, as you made very clear, we have to take emotion out of it, and we have to look at what's best for the city of Cleveland going forward. And again, in my view, the settlement is appropriate. The dollar amount of the settlement, which again I can speak to, is appropriate, and it is a good way to basically make lemonade out of lemons. So I'll stop there. I know there are questions, and I'll be happy to address any questions.
Thank you. So before we take questions, I know I have Councilman Charles Slife. I know I have Councilman Michael Polensek, Councilman Brian Casey. I will ask if our staff can take this and make sure that our law department has this so that we can take this into consideration, as well as Director Mark Griffin is here with us today. I'm going to first hear from the administration, from Ms. Trevisano, since she's taken the lead, and then we'll pivot to Director Griffin if he has any comments. And I really appreciate Mr. Silliman taking time. I want to, for full disclosure, I have reached out to Mr. Silliman for the last 3 years to have discussions about this because I probably trust him most around a lot of these matters, as well as reaching out to other people. And there are several other attorneys that concur with his assessment of this as well. So that being said, I'll start out with Ms. Trevisano.
Mr. Chairman.
And then I'll hear that.
Can you put me down, please?
I will put you down, sir, but please, can I ask everybody? I'm going to need everybody to really be very, very succinct with their questions because we only have limited time. But Ms. Trevisano, Director Griffin.
Yeah, thank you, Council President, and thank you, Ken, for those remarks and for your, careful feedback on the term sheet. I can clarify on the business points that our intention was not to prioritize Brook Park over Cleveland projects. There are often times where the city has multiple letters of support in for the same type of funding stream. And so it wouldn't be unusual for us to have multiple projects that we are supporting for the same project, but the intention was not to prioritize Brook Park projects over the city's projects. And I will also say that we've clarified that none of these obligations require the city to make any sort of financial commitment to the project in Brook Park. So I will ask our law director to speak to the specific language, but I know that it's something that we're going to look at again and take a close look at. Thanks to Mr. Silliman.
Through the chair, to the chair. First of all, I want to say thank you to all the council members here for a chance to talk to you again about a very important project. And I want to thank Mr. Silliman. I don't think you can find a better public servant or one who's more knowledgeable about economic development and the impact of the law on our city. He has decades of experience, and so I'm grateful for him and for his review where he has kind of taken a keen eye to the core terms and then also the legal language. And again, I'm grateful to Mr. Silliman for supporting the core terms With respect to his suggestion on the edit about best efforts, I think that he has raised an important point that we're going to look at. And as Chief Trevisano said, it was not our intention to prioritize one over the other. In my 30 years of litigation, I've never seen something litigated over best practices versus reasonable practices. But I think everything that we can do to eliminate uncertainty in the contract is important and valuable. And so we absolutely take, you take the good with the bad. And so or you take the compliments with the criticisms. And I want to say thank you to Mr. Silliman for raising this issue. And we're going to look at it and make it clear that we are not going to prioritize anything in favor of Brook Park. Look, our priority is the city of Cleveland, always. And we will always do that. And so Mr. Silliman has raised a good point, and I think that we will look at that. I'd also say a couple things. We're not paying any money for any reason, and we have an arbitration clause to speed things through if there's any uncertainty about what a contract means. But I think Mr. Silliman has focused our attention on a small but important point.
Well, and just so I can make this clear, I am heavily leaning on, if that is not the intent, then this amendment should definitely be made, because if it comes down to a project that means we get Miles Road done, or Lee Road done, or Rocky River Road done, versus Brook Park, I'm choosing Miles, Lee, and Rocky River. So we want to make sure that this council has the flexibility and does not inadvertently lock itself into an agreement where even if our partners who might read that inadvertently take that as a tacit approval that we're going to prioritize this interchange and these kind of improvements over some of the neighborhood and other things that we think are priorities, then we want to make sure that the language appropriately reflects that. And one of the things that I will tell you is that we already have some conflicting things with that. When the state does its capital plan, for the first time, I believe 2 to 3 years ago, for the first time, unanimously, the county council executive, the county council president, the mayor, myself, the head of the Greater Cleveland Partnership, as well as others, all signed joint letters to support capital projects. I do not want this to become an impediment to us trying to really have a unified front in order to try to bring dollars back from Columbus here. But it needs to be clearly stated that we won't prioritize this over some of the other infrastructure needs that we have. Okay? So we'll look at that legislation, and that's something that I want to put a point in for potential amendments, okay? Just a couple of questions, and then I'll turn it over to Slife Polensek, KZ Jones. Mr. Silliman, if you could, thank you so much for bringing this to us. I just have to ask, why do you believe that this project is not one of the best projects, or probably the worst project that you've seen in the area? Is it because of the impact that it would have in the central business district, or because of the way that it's structured, or because of the potential poaching or other kind of things from some of the downtown central business district?
Thank you for that question, Council President. If and when the Browns are able to get one or more county council members to take this issue up, I have a 12-point memo outlining all the reasons why the county should not commit funding to this. But to simplify it, my answer to your question is the city's economic study did a great job of documenting that this Brook Park Dome scheme will harm the city to the tune of $11 million in tax revenues lost per year and $30 million, harder to pin down, economic development. That beyond that harm to the city's economic study went on to suggest that in a slow growth region like Northeast Ohio, when you build a new retail complex, you don't add, value. What happens in a slow growth region, which we unfortunately still are, what happens is that the people that visit the new place spend their dollars there instead of existing places. So apart from cannibalizing the city, and taking dollars that used to be spent in the city, you're also cannibalizing other parts of the county. For example, look at West Side shopping centers such as Great Northern, Crocker Park, Westgate, all of these non-subsidized shopping areas. How do you defend sending public money to a new retail complex, which is part of this scheme, and not subsidizing the other centers, particularly when whatever retail they get in Brook Park is going to pull customers away from downtown Cleveland over to the Brook Park venue. The city's economic study also talks about once the project gets settled in, and once the Browns learn that they're not going to get 1.5 million more visitors out of Brook Park than they get at the lakefront, and once they see the realities that other cities with domes have experienced over the last 20 years, those realities, again, were documented by one of the economists that Councilman Casey invited last year, that once they realize that they're going to get maybe 5 or more extra events beyond what you have at the lakefront, they're going to compete very aggressively with the Rocket Arena, with the Convention Center downtown, and every other activity in the city of Cleveland to get dates, bookings at their new facility. Finally, there are the 2 studies made at the state level, one by the Governor's Office of Budget Management, and secondly, by the state's Legislative Service Committee. Both of them cast considerable shade on the Browns economic study that promised all these extra jobs and extra events and everything else. So, and as I mentioned before, ask any national economist that studied this area, they'll tell you that the benefits from building a new sports facility really do not show up as new value to the economy. One reason we cite Gateway as a successful project is not that it necessarily added new dollars to the economy, but it redeveloped a much needed deteriorated urban neighborhood. And that's where Gateway contributed its own special benefit to the city and region. You don't have that out in Brook Park.
Thank you. And I'm going to make sure that Mr. Deemer in his remarks can answer this, but part of the argument that the teams have made to me and other supporters of this is that there will only be a limited amount of hotel rooftops out in the new development. Therefore, it would still drive occupancy rates and other things to the central business district. And I'd like for you guys to address that when your time comes up. But I do,
Quickly to
Sure,
that point,
sure.
Council President, this spring, I took a West Coast train trip and I included a one-day visit to Inglewood, California, which is the site of what most people regard as the crown jewel of stadium mixed-use development, SoFi Stadium, where the Rams and Chargers play their football games. That complex opened 5 years ago, and it's got all kinds of activity around it, a casino, other. Only now, in the spring, were they breaking ground on a 300-room hotel 5 years after. And I think the reason they broke ground on the hotel this year is because the Intel new basketball arena for the Los Angeles Clippers opened across the street. My point being, don't necessarily believe you're going to get those hotels that the Haslams are promising out there in Brook Park, because if it takes a while for it to happen in Inglewood, draw your own conclusions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Silliman. One last question, and then I'll turn it over to my committee. And this is, I'm gonna try to collapse my questions, so please see if you can capture it all. In your opinion, how would you advise this council if we have any other leverage points beyond the lease or anything else that you just stated? So do we have any other leverage points? You know, the lease was the one thing I thought was a leverage point, and a couple of other things. The other thing that I really want to make sure that we understand is, why can't we just keep the current stadium even for another different use? If that might be considered, what would that look like? And last but not least, what else would you recommend this council try to extract out of this deal in order to make sure that we get the best benefit for the city of Cleveland?
On the, Council President, on the first question about leverage points, in my judgment, we had the two lawsuits. The one I'm most identified with is the breach of lease, because the paragraph that we relied on in that is a paragraph that Denda Thomas at Squires Law Firm drafted in the original lease as a basic protection against a future Art Modell. So there's strong language there. The Art Modell law, we all know how the state budget this year basically emasculated the Art Modell law. So we had a strong lease claim and a weakened Art Modell law. But again, as I testified earlier, at best case, assuming we prevailed in the lower courts and the state Supreme Court upheld our victory, all we get is a delay. We can't prevent the move. So my answer to your question is, we don't have any leverage other than the lawsuits, and the lawsuits only give us a partial relief. So that's my answer to that. Your second question was, second or third, was about continuing to use the stadium as it is. And in my judgment, the only scenario where you could continue to use the stadium is if you did a major renovation, not renovation, a major reconstruction, and basically knocked off the upper deck to create a soccer-specific facility. There was a proposal to that effect from Neotrans over the summer. But I think that I doubt whether that would be successful given the cost of doing a complete reconstruction. So in my judgment, and again, I have a lot of sentimental attachment to that facility, but I think once the Browns stop playing there, the demolition is really your only realistic option. Now, you had one other matter.
The other question is, if you had any recommendations about other things that we should try to, you know, secure through a deal like this, if you had any ideas, what would that be? I have some ideas that I'm going to pitch to this crowd today, but.
I honestly have not come up with any others. I mean, I know a lot of people question the dollar amount of the settlement. I don't. Again, having looked at what our legal options are and what other leverage are, in my judgment, $100 million is a pretty good takeaway for the city, given how much we were compromised by actions by the state of Ohio. But I know council, I know from the past, in my appearance before council in the past, that council can get very creative as to other options, and I'm certainly not ruling those out. But as to the dollar amount, I think we have got, you know, a fair sum.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Silliman, for giving us an honest, independent assessment. We know that you don't work for the administration, you don't work for the Browns, and you don't work for council. So this is you as an independent citizen that has a tremendous amount of knowledge and background of these type of deals. I really appreciate you coming in and giving us your opinion. I'll now turn it over to the floor. I have Slife, Polensik, Casey, Joe Jones.
Thank you, Chief. This is a strange dynamic that I'll adjust to it. I'll adjust to it. But I'm
I
not
feel
used to-
bad.
I'm not
weird calling
used to
them
having
Ken.
the microphone, and it's usually the other way around.
Exactly.
I'll just share with you, Chief, that I can be inclined to agree with the value of the deal. My frustrations have maybe been more about the proposed end uses of dollars, and without going in too much of a tirade because we only have so much time, but it is my strong opinion that the residents of this city, including the residents I represent, are frequently expected to sort of disproportionately finance what are regionally beneficial amenities. And I fear once again that we are going to go further down a road where Cleveland residents are being asked to effectively accept less for the greater good, very often by voices who are engaged in the city but live in the suburbs, and I think are therefore maybe not as willing to participate in carrying that burden. But I start there because a focus of mine has been, if the Browns move to Brook Park, yes, there are a lot of negative impacts for the city, but there's a lot of also spillover impacts within the neighborhood that I represent. And I am very thankful that you're bringing forward this infrastructure component, because if my colleagues are not aware, a proposal was already brought to NOACA, and it's been tabled for further development, determining what infrastructure improvements would be needed around the Browns Stadium to facilitate that level of traffic. And as originally proposed, and again, this is information for my colleagues, I believe there were 6 buildable units, it's actually projects, all within the city of Brook Park, and then one that was sort of shown including an infill RTA station that wouldn't have been funded, but was just given for information purposes. And my concern was that the what had been analyzed to that point didn't account for the fact that a substantial percentage of patrons leaving a new stadium, instead of going east on Snow Road, would go west on Snow Road and immediately interface with the exit to Cleveland Hopkins International Airport. The highway in front of the airport is actually in the city of Brook Park, but the airport is owned by and in the city of Cleveland. So that would create a high level of concern for the ability to egress the airport. I was speaking with Councilwoman Moore just before this started, talking about how infrastructure projects right now at Hopkins are already causing issues for patrons, and we can only anticipate that they're going to get worse as we go further into the transportation or the terminal modernization plan over the coming years. Additionally, beyond just the airport, maybe my colleagues don't travel this way, but you can't get on 480 West from the airport. You have to get off of the highway and go down Brook Park Road in Ward 17. And understanding how patrons coming to or leaving the stadium would require to use City of Cleveland streets, especially in Ward 16 and 17, whether they are just trying to connect to a highway or they're coming up through the neighborhood to get to I-90, I think was a glaring omission in that analysis. So I thank you to the chief for bringing up the scenario where a project on Miles Road could become derailed because of an obligation to support something in Brook Park. But there's also a more closer to home scenario where there actually are infrastructure needs in the city of Cleveland. And if I don't want to end up in a situation where we essentially have unfunded mandates to begin making infrastructure improvements because we've been hamstrung by a deal that didn't anticipate that from the forefront. So I guess my question to the administration was going to be, are the Browns receptive to this type of change within the term sheet? It sounds as if that's a premature question because that hasn't been brought to them. Is that the case?
To the councilman through the chair, we've talked to the, following an initial conversation with Chief Silliman, talked to the Browns about this sort of general concern around prioritization of Brook Park projects over the city. We are on the same page. That is not what is intended. We have not talked about specific language changes to then address.
Okay, so I would echo the council president in supporting this, and then also just understand beyond just specific infrastructure. We've talked about how the administration identified the West Park Rapid Station as the #2 TOD site in the city of Cleveland. We have the Cam's Corners Business District. Like, there are actual, I am hopeful that people still come and tailgate downtown and then somehow get to the game instead of having to pay $300 to park at the Brown Stadium. But I also think that there are opportunities for the spillover effects of a game day to bleed over into the immediately adjacent Cleveland neighborhood. And I also want to make sure that whatever economic development priorities we would do to sort of figure out how we could maximize this for the city of Cleveland is going to, is going to include an outlying Cleveland neighborhood, not just downtown. But two, that we are not going to find ourselves to be in a limiting situation where we're not able to invest in those sorts of things because of a term sheet that didn't anticipate such a scenario. So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you, Councilman Slife, and I will tell you just a few things that I have already begun to outline, and the intention is once we get through this hearing is to have some amendments that we recommend to the administration and that this council would embrace, and then also to look at where we can make some very critical investments as you're talking about. Some things that run across my mind already are like Ginn Academy, John Hay, JFK, Sheridan Hotel, and West Park Rapid Station. So these are things that we want to try to understand, and that's where your original statement about the end use of these dollars is something that we really have to have a discussion about on how we want to see some of those things. So I hope to embrace all the council and to have that discussion. Councilman Michael Polensek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, the administration, and Mr. Silliman. Having you back at the table reminds me of the Polargas movie. You're back. So let me just say this: you've read the agreement, correct?
Through the chair to Councilman Polensek, yes. The
Okay.
term sheet.
The term sheet.
I've read the term sheet.
Okay, so the council president touched on the issue with the existing stadium, because in the term sheet, if we agree to it, the stadium has to go. That's a given. That's what was said at this table in the last hearing we had, that that's part of the agreement, that the stadium must be torn down. And you understand that correctly?
Through the chair to Councilman, yes.
See, and I'm not convinced that the stadium needs to come down, because I have not seen an independent study of the stadium, the conditions of the existing facility. I don't believe the council has seen that as well. So that's something that we're going to be asking, we should be asking that question. With regard to your thoughts on the lease extension without any change in the lease for possibly two more years, what's your comment on that?
Through the chair to Councilman Polensek, I understand why the Browns would want that provision, given that through the litigation that the city initiated and other actions, that their schedule was getting backed up, and it's understandable that they would want a safety valve in the event that their project is not ready for occupancy by the fall of 2029. As to the terms of the economic terms that would apply to those 2 years, I really am not going to offer an opinion on those. Basically, I'm not going to second guess the provisions on the 2-year extension.
Okay. I'm not aware, Mr. Chairman, of any landlord who would have a tenant for 30 years, and then when that lease expired, that you would just continue the same lease terms. I'm not aware of that in any environment, that the $250,000 they pay us a year would remain in place. That, to me, is inconceivable. When you look at the terms, and you've indicated at the table you believe the $100 million is sufficient, and you also realize, I hope, that we still owe $33 million on the existing stadium. We owe $27.871 million in debt service / interest. They expect us to pay another $12 million on capital on a stadium that we're supposed to tear down. And at this point, we already have spent $1.1 million on the legal fees. So when you add all that up, you come up at this point right now with a $3.97 million loss as of right now, based on the agreement. And this is where I'm at, stepping back for a moment. We cannot continue to make bad deals in this city. And we cannot continue to take major hits. As we sit here, we have the jail moving to Garfield Heights, 400-plus jobs, tremendous economic impact on downtown Cleveland. I could go down through all the other projects that we've done over the years, and we wound up they wound up not having the impact they were all promised, including the existing stadium, which is estimated that we have spent somewhere around $700 million. And when we've asked for what the additional costs that we incurred, the roads, the sewers, the water lines, CPP, nobody could tell us because they say it's been too long ago, because we've made that request with staff. So when I look at the big picture, and as I said publicly, I appreciate Mr. Haslam reaching out to me. We spoke 2 times on the phone. And I indicated to him I felt the deal as it stood that was insufficient, that I could not support it. And when he asked me, well, what's your opinion? What do you think needs to change? And I went over the debt service. I went over what we still owe. I went over the capital repairs. That I thought that the Browns needed to step up and at least help us cover. And his comment was to me, I'm not going to negotiate against myself. So that told me right there that we could have got more out of them. That told me right there that we could have got more. Because I kept hearing this $100 million figure for the last year, and I kept saying, no, it can't be. That can't be right. It can't be right, $100 million. We got to get more out of this deal. And that's the exact number that we came up with. Because I heard that number was floated from day one and no change. So as I go out and I visit my constituents, and I can tell you this, when I was going door to door during this campaign, and I walked to my ward, I didn't hear anybody tell me that we should give more to Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns. What I heard was, we need police in our neighborhoods. We need code enforcement. We need help to fix our homes. I heard all the litany of concerns that Cleveland expressed. And here we are, we sit here today. We're being presented with 18 more schools to be closed, on top of the 28 that have already been closed on Cleveland's east side. So it goes back to my original comment, Mr. Chairman, and my honorable colleagues, and to the presenters here at the table. I'm a firm believer there should have been a full court press on the NFL. Why there was not an effort made with Roger Goodell in in New York is beyond me. I think had Mike White been here, there would have been scorched earth between now and New York. In fact, I don't think it, I know it. I know it, there would have been scorched earth. I mean, there's not been a full court press placed on Jimmy Haslam nor the NFL.
Councilman, could you wrap up?
Mr. Chairman?
Could you?
I'll wrap it up.
'cause we
And
have
so here we are today again at the 11th hour, because we're being asked to pass this by the end of the year. And Mr. Chairman, as I've said publicly, as the deal stands right now, unless the pot is sweetened for the Cleveland residents, for our taxpayers, there's no way I can support this. I can't go back and tell my residents and confront my residents, everything that they're dealing with in their neighborhoods, that this is the best deal we could come up with. I don't believe it's the best deal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Pulisic. I'm going to allow any remarks, but once again, I want to make sure that everybody is clear that we are answering Chief Silliman's questions. We're then going to bring up Mr. Skinner and Mr. Ebersol, and we'll have a chance to have a general conversation around the tenants. But I want to make sure we get Mr. Silliman's questions so that he can leave.
Yeah.
Mr. Silliman.
Through the chair to Councilman Polensek, on the point of whether we pressed the Haslams enough or the NFL enough, unlike you, in the 1996, I was in meetings with Mr. Goodell for 3 months. I know how the NFL negotiates. I know what their priorities are. Mr. Goodell is a very capable representative of the 32 NFL owners he represents. And make no mistake, when they're in a room, they don't care about City of Cleveland issues. Their priority is getting stadiums built for their owners at the most favorable terms possible. And nothing's changed in that regard between 1996 and today. Now, as far as how you negotiate with the NFL, under today's legal environment, it's very difficult. That's why at the end of my book, I recommended congressional legislation to basically level the playing field between local governments and the teams, because they have made an art form of playing one city off against the other by threatening to move unless the first city antes up big dollars, and that's the game they play. As to your earlier points about the debt due on the stadium and the capital repairs, I understand that those are still obligations that we have. But those obligations date to the deal in 1996, which you voted no again.
That's right.
So that the time to have corrected those situations was 96. And if a majority of council had shared your view back then, we wouldn't have as high a capital, obligations or as high a debt service. We might not have a team either. So in terms of trying to recover obligations that we basically committed to in 96, today, on top of, the lakefront money or whatever, I just don't think you're going to get there. That's my opinion.
Okay.
You certainly have a different opinion, and we're going to agree to disagree.
Right.
Thank you, Ken.
As we always have.
And I'm going to move now to Councilman Brian Casey. Councilman Brian Casey, and remember, please keep the comments relegated to Mr. Sillums. We do have another group of speakers that will be coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Silman, thanks for being here today. In regards to your comments regarding the term sheet and Section 2F, which states use best efforts to assist Browns with public safety planning and utilities in connection with operation at the Brook Park Stadium mixed-use project. In your, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Silliman, in your legal opinion, does that mean we would do stuff like put our best effort into assuring that they have security for game day, assuring that they have security getting in and out of that mixed-use project, things like that?
Through the chair to Councilman Casey, I think it would be a stretch to interpret the best efforts language to require the city to contribute money to Brook Park. I don't read it that far, but I do think that by that paragraph F saying we're going to use best efforts in terms of doing everything other than writing a check to Brook Park, I think it could commit us to that, and that's why I recommend that we strike F in its entirety.
So, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Silliman, in other words, right, we could provide the physical police bodies and just be reimbursed or have somebody else pay for them, correct? According to that.
Through the chair to the councilman, that certainly is a possibility.
Okay. And then, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Silliman, you were obviously a big part of the negotiations when the Browns were coming back last time. Can you touch on what the mindset was back then to protect us from what we're doing now, right? We know, according to the administration and the attorneys, that the Haslam Sports Group are in violation of the lease, right, by going through all this. And it appears to me, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Chairman, that they're just getting a pass on that, right? Because we're negotiating this, and part of them buying their way out of this with their $100 million is that we overlook the fact that they've done something wrong. But what was the mindset back then to put this into perspective for us today so that we wouldn't be sitting here going through what we're going through today?
Through the chair to Councilman Casey, The mindset of our negotiating team, which was led by Mayor White and kind of almost co-chaired by Fred Nance, Esquire Sanders, and his attorneys. I was Mayor White's development executive, so I was part of that team. Our mindset back in '96, when this lease was being drafted by Squire Sanders and by my friend and former colleague Dinda Thomas, the mindset was never again. In other words, if we're going to sign a new lease that's going to apply to whoever comes in as the owner, one thing we're going to have in there is something that prevents that new owner from, while the lease is still in effect, negotiating with some other state or city the way Art Modell did when there was 3 years remaining on his lease. And when Dinda Thomas drafted that paragraph, it was specifically targeted at never again will this happen. You will be hard-pressed to find a paragraph like that in any other city's NFL lease. And I think it gave us significant leverage as far as the lawsuit based on the breach of the lease. But again, you can only get so much remedy out of a contract provision, and the remedy, in my judgment, was not strong enough to prevent the move, but rather to postpone it.
All right, and then, one thing that keeps coming up, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Silliman, was the fact that whoever owned that team, right, was paying $250,000 a month for the life of that lease. Now, we know that nobody here is ever going to buy anything, right, and have a 30-year lease on anything without the increase in rents, right? What was the thought and the belief and the thinking behind allowing them to only pay $250 a month for 30 years, or $250 a year? I'm sorry, for 30 years.
Through the chair, the Councilman Casey, did our negotiating team, again, led by Mayor White, think that $250,000 a year was a fair rental to pay for this brand-new stadium that we were building for whoever the owner would be? No, not even close. But you get what you can get, given the leverage that you had. And we were fighting to reclaim our team. And when terms like that are bandied about by the NFL, it was with all the leverage that they have by, in the first case, threatening to move. In our case in '96, they actually had done the move, and we were trying to get them back. And again, until federal law is instituted that sets some kind of ground rules for how leagues and their constituent owners deal with local governments and create a more level playing field, every local government that sees its team lease nearing expiration is going to be subject to the same harsh negotiating stance. And you're basically, you get what you can, but you don't want to lose the team. And you don't want to push hard enough that causes them to do what Modell did to us in 1995.
Right. And then one last thing, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Silliman, and as per our panel that we held on this whole thing, building this park playground, right, does not constitute any way, shape, or form as an economic engine, right? It's just moving dollars around a region, right? I mean, it's not going to, I think you know what
Yep.
what I'm trying to say, but if you could just touch on that.
Yes, through the chair to Councilman Casey, Again, the state's own legislative service commission study and the Office of Budget Management study spoke very clearly to the points you just made. And yet, the state legislature basically sidestepped those recommendations and chose to make tantamount to a $600 million grant to the Browns. Furthermore, and this is a point that I'm not sure too many people have been made, but I will tell you that in the years that I was negotiating for the city of Cleveland on our various stadium leases, in virtually every major negotiation, there was a very real threat of the team moving outside the region, not just from Cleveland to Brook, but outside the region. There was no possibility of that happening here with the Browns. They had no leverage with the state of Ohio, with the city of Cleveland, or with Cuyahoga County, because they were not going to move outside the region. They said that to the media, and furthermore, anyone who studies NFL economics, as you know, season tickets are sold out every year at this stadium. There's an 8,000-person waiting list. TV ratings in Cleveland are among the highest in the country. I mean, for them to move outside this region would be economic suicide. We knew that. The state should have known that before they opened up the purse strings for $600 million.
And Mr. Chairman and Mr. Silliman, the only place to vie for entertainment dollars out in Brook Park would be downtown Cleveland, because no other place hosts any type of concerts, any types of plays, or anything like that. So the only place that they're going to be pulling from in the stadium aspect, right? They want to do their retail or whatever, they're going to pull from
Right.
South Park, they're going to pull from Great Northern,
Right.
they're going to pull from everywhere else. But the entertainment dollar, the only place that they can pull from is the city of Cleveland and downtown, correct?
Correct, and as I said before, 3-4 years down the road, when the Browns realized that their extravagant promises of extra events, for example, their attorney testified before the Ohio legislature that taxes at Brook Park will quadruple what they were from the lakefront. Once they realized how wildly overly optimistic those projections were 3 or 4 years down, they're going to get more aggressive in competing with downtown venues. And that's when we'll really feel the challenge.
Well, and I'll take it one step further, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Sullivan. I'll even say that this is going to be such a disaster out in Brook Park that whoever owns that team in 30 years will be coming back to the city of Cleveland begging us to come back downtown to the core. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have Councilman Jones and Councilman Morrow. Remember, I'm having everybody on a restricted timeline because I do have other guests, and they have a lot of answers to the questions that we're asking. So please keep it relegated to Mr. Silverman. Mr. Jones, Ms. Morrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the distinguished gentleman, Mr. Silliman, first of all, a model was set. You guys did do a great job in creating the Gateway project for the proposition of bringing all our sports teams and keeping them in the city of Cleveland for the thought of the time or the mission of the time as a major class city. And I think that's how it was sold way back then. I know that because I was here. And so I guess my question to you would be based upon all of your engagement in this process. Why would Jimmy Haslam give us $100 million if he had such an upper hand, given the fact that the state has already given him $600 million? What is the $100 million for, really?
Through the chair to Councilman Jones, I cannot read the Haslam's minds. And so as to what specifically motivated them to offer $100 million in exchange for this settlement, I can't answer. I can say and again, I'm not speaking to what the Haslam's actual motivation might have been, but I can speak to kind of an objective, someone in the position of the Haslams with what they had in hand and what they were trying to achieve. It would make some sense to make the city's lawsuits go away because of the delay factor that they were causing. And the opportunity to make the lawsuits go away, number one, and number two, recapture some positive PR because the Haslams have been associated with the lakefront in the past. Those might, from the outside looking in, be logical motivations. Whether those were the motivations the Haslams had, I can't speak to.
Now, you talked about in your testimony earlier about a paragraph that was put in the contract. Can you elaborate with that potentially?
If we could, I apologize. He had an extensive conversation on that, and then you also have a memo that gives the recommendation. So if you could
Mr.
touch on
Chairman,
it
and
again,
just
Mr. Silliman, but I do want to make sure for the time's sake, we don't have to go through the same.
Through the chair to Councilman Jones, I think the paragraph you're referring to, Councilman, is in the Browns lease, right?
Correct.
And that, I don't cover that in my memo. Basically, what that paragraph says is that as an NFL franchise, the owner of that franchise shall not negotiate with parties with the goal of relocating the team outside the city of Cleveland during the term of this lease. And that term of the lease goes through the end of '98. So as the city's lawsuit very appropriately argued, they were in violation of that provision the minute they started talking to Brook Park, when they went to the Planning Commission of Brook Park, when they went to the state legislature. So that's what it basically, and again, the reason that paragraph was in there is that's exactly what Art Modell did with 3 years remaining on his lease. And we wanted to make sure when we drafted that provision in '96 to make sure that didn't happen again.
And so now it has happened again. Now we're in the midst of it, right? With that paragraph being in there, what kind of strength does it really technically have in terms of, or would that potentially be one of the reasons why we're looking at $100 million? Or should we, if we played this out, worst case scenario, and fought this issue, could we get more? Could we get more money? Can we keep them here somehow? Because never again was the paragraph put in there. And the whole purpose was we did not want to lose our Browns team in the city. And from what I've heard, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Silliman, is that we're looking at $30 million where our businesses in the downtown city of Cleveland are going to be impacted. And we're looking at another $11 million in our coffers. So the question on an annual basis. So I guess the question is, how would that help us now?
Well, through the chair to Councilman Jones, again, I think that paragraph, being in the lease, put the Browns in a position of a clear violation of the lease. I think that at the if we maintain the lawsuit, I think the lower level courts would probably have agreed with the city of Cleveland. The Ohio Supreme Court is more speculative. But I do think had we continued with that litigation, we would have significantly delayed the Browns project, but we would not have prevented it. And in my judgment, given all the factors and all the lawsuits and that, in my judgment, $100 million is a pretty fair outcome for the city, given what leverage we had and what leverage we don't have.
And you also talked about earlier, Mr. Chairman, about the Modell Law, and I've heard a lot about that, how it was gutted by the state. You know, we have, you know, smoke shops here, and then there's this such thing we call grandfathered in. Wouldn't this already be grandfathered in, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Silliman?
Well,
Wouldn't this still apply to them?
Well, through the chair to Councilman Jones, I believe that was part of the arguments that the Jones State lawyers were making on behalf of the city, even after the state legislature emasculated the Art Modell law. That I believe that was our argument. I see the law director nodding, that those legislative amendments were prospective only and could not apply to existing matters. So I think that was the argument. But again, we've chosen to settle that.
I see. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Silliman, for being here. Appreciate you fighting back in the old days for us to have the team as long as we have had it. And it's really unfortunate to be here today, even talking about the subject matter.
Through the chair to the
Councilman, Mr. Griffin, and last remark, and then I'm going to give Councilwoman Mara the last question, and then we're going to go into the broader panel. Yes.
I just want to be clear about the remedy for a violation of the Modell Law. First of all, we would argue that it still applies, but if we were to win 100%, the remedy is simply to allow a 6-month period for people to come in and possibly make an offer, and there is no obligation for them to sell the team. So that is also not a remedy of where we can keep the team here in Cleveland.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, Director. Councilman Marr, last question for Mr. Silliman, then we're going to open it up for the broader panel, and then Mr. Silliman, you're welcome to stay as long as you are, because I can see a lot of people have interest and they may want to follow up with you. So I'm going to ask if our policy team can get your information if there are follow-up questions for you, okay?
To the chair, I do have some flexibility, so
Okay.
at least for an hour, so I intend to stick around.
Absolutely, thank you. Councilwoman Marr, and then I'll go to the broader panel, okay?
Thank you, and I was grateful for the chance to hear you speak at the panel that Councilman Casey organized last year. I've been really focused on the issue that you hit on, which is the unlikely event of the Haslams moving the team outside of the region entirely. And I absolutely agree with you that the economics of the NFL have effectively changed, where cities are no longer competing in this intense way that they were for these teams, and there's less of an incentive than there was in the past. But I think something that's kept me up at night is the risks around the $600 million contributions from the state, with it coming out of the unclaimed funds pool and the litigation around that. Do you have any insight or thoughts about what would happen if the $600 million fund was barred from being dispersed to the Haslams, or if that became essentially a non-viable pathway at the State House? Through the chair.
Through the chair to Councilwoman Mauer, I have thought about that question, and if the litigants prevailed and basically prevented the state from doing that funding in the manner provided out of the unclaimed funds, call me extremely cynical about motives of state legislatures. I think what would happen the minute that decision took effect, the Browns would be back in Columbus pursuing other pots of money, maybe even reverting to Governor DeWine's original gambling tax proposal. In other words, I am convinced that if that lawsuit is successful, that will not stop the Browns. They will find a way in Columbus to get money from some other pot. So I think that my assessment of that litigation is, if it's successful, I don't think it will prevent the move either. I think it will delay the move. And I think that again, I think that the Browns will get some other replacement remedy from the state. As far as I had heard before of your concern about the team relocating outside the region. Again, for reasons I already stated, the economics. Furthermore, again, our negotiating team in 1996 spent an intense 4 months with Roger Goodell back in 96. I will tell you without question that the last thing Roger Goodell will want is another fight with Browns fans nationwide. He had all of that he could handle back in 96. Since then, the NFL has strengthened its ties to the region at the Hall of Fame in Canton. I cannot imagine a scenario where if the Browns got so upset about not getting the $600 million and started to look nationally for a new place, that they would not find the support from Commissioner Goodell to bless that.
Thank you. That's really helpful insight. I appreciate it. And I know the worst case scenarios are, like, what do they call it? The tail end risk. It's way at the end. It's very, very unlikely, but it's very, very big. But I appreciate your insight into just how unlikely it is. I think that is certainly insightful, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, if I could, I'm going to ask Mr. Silliman to please stay, but I'm going to ask if we could, even though I need the law director and chief economic development to stick around, I'm going to ask if Mr. Skinner can join us at the table and announce the organization that he's with, and then also if Mr. Ebersol from Greater Cleveland Partnership can join us at the table. And we're going to go in this order. We're going to hear from Mr. Deemer, then we're going to hear from Mr. Ebersol, and then we're going to hear from the future from Mr. Skinner, okay? And then after we hear from this next group of panelists, then we'll revert back to questions from the council, okay? So, Mr. Deemer, and tell us who you are. I know who you are, but please make sure the council knows who you are and who you represent. And I want to say this for the listening audience. Finance Committee will probably be delayed. This is a very important conversation, and I want to afford the council members an opportunity to really talk to this group of external experts and external people that can give us insight on making one of the most important decisions that we need to determine that we're going to make, okay? So, Mr. Deemer, and then we'll go to Mr. Ebersol, and then Mr. Skinner.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Michael Deemer, President and CEO of Downtown Cleveland, Inc. I appreciate the opportunity to be with all of you today. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this very, very important issue. To everything, there's a season, a time to mourn, a time to feel anger about the loss of tradition and a downtown anchor. I believe this is a time to build, a time to move forward with purpose and clear vision. And that's why, on behalf of downtown businesses, large and small, property owners, residents, and workers, I'm very respectfully and heavy-heartedly urging this council to approve the $100 million settlement with the Haslam Sports Group. I want to say I come at this from a unique position, I believe. Throughout this saga, our organization has stood shoulder to shoulder with this council, with the mayor, with the county executive, fighting to keep this team and this stadium in downtown Cleveland. I stand by everything we've said throughout the process. The previous speaker talked about this being one of the worst economic development deals he's seen. I've referred to it as a generational mistake. The move has consequences. It creates competition for scarce private and public capital, and it puts absolutely undeniable pressure on the city's core. But the issue before us today, as I see it, is not where the Browns will be located. The issue, in my judgment, is how Cleveland positions itself to compete and ensuring we use the next 3 to 5 years wisely. And this 3 to 5 year window is critical. The stadium concept in Brook Park is built around hotels, new office, new retail, that this region cannot support and doesn't need, can't support it without cannibalizing from downtown. But the best protection Cleveland has against overbuilding on the outskirts is by strengthening the core and making downtown a place that people choose first. We've worked with business leaders, residents, and civic partners to put forth a greater downtown vision that does just that by strengthening safety, connectivity, activation, and driving growth in the core. This settlement helps clear the path to advance that vision now when that timing matters most, that 3 to 5 year runway that we have to really improve our competitiveness. And while I don't want to overpromise, I do want to acknowledge that state officials, while supporting the Browns' move and opposing our position, have consistently stated that they recognize the state has a responsibility to invest in Cleveland and downtown specifically to make the city whole. And since we're talking about the state, I do want to note here that I fully concur with the previous speaker, Mr. Silliman, that, again, in my judgment, the die was cast when the state made its decision to support this relocation to the tune of $600 million. From that point on, in my opinion, everything has been about the city getting the best deal that it can, and I know that's what we're here to talk about today. And from a downtown Cleveland perspective, making sure that we're doing everything that we can, working with this council and all of our partners to make sure that we're strengthening the core. The settlement, $100 million plus any cost, as I understand it, over $30 million for demolition and site prep, protects taxpayers, it provides clarity, and positions us to work with this body, the administration, on the policies and capital investments that we need to make downtown the place where people want to be. So for these reasons, we respectfully urge council to support the settlement. We appreciate your leadership. We appreciate your partnership. And I'll be happy to answer any questions when the time comes.
Thank you. And once again, to this council, we're going to hear from all of these panelists. And then I want to make it clear that I want to give an opportunity for some of the council members that haven't had a chance to ask questions first to ask questions. And then I will revert back to a couple of the council members who have asked to be added back to the agenda so that they can have follow-up questions. I'll now go to Mr. David Ebersol and then actually Scott Skinner. Mr. Scott Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Council President, members of council. Thank you for inviting the Greater Cleveland Partnership to the table today. I'm David Ebersol, Vice President of Development Finance at GCP, and I'm here today on behalf of our President and CEO, Baiju Shah, who's out of the country, but sends his thanks as well. GCP supports this agreement between the administration and the Haslam Sports Group and encourages the council to proceed with approval. We commend the mayor and all parties with securing a forward-looking transaction that will continue to invest in the downtown Lake Erie waterfront and also allow the development of a domed stadium that will benefit the region. GCP and its members are committed to working with our government partners and with the leadership demonstrated here at the table today to support growth and investment in downtown, the lakefront, and our city as a whole. Our business community advocacy has supported the successful efforts to attract federal and state funding to the lakefront and riverfronts, and we will continue to do so in both Washington and Columbus to support the development of our waterfronts and our city. We work together with the city in many spaces, in talent, through the Greater Cleveland Career Consortium, in inclusion, through our support of the Community Benefits Ordinance, and in development initiatives, including the future of Burke Lakefront Airport, innovation districts, and projects such as Centro Via 25, the Hawthorne School Development, and Westside Market, where our affiliate CDA has invested. It is no secret that our organizations on both sides of this table have had different views on a new domed stadium. We believe that the construction of the Dome Stadium will stimulate tourism business in the city and throughout the region, including in Cleveland's downtown. To support this conclusion, we looked at peer domed communities, Detroit, Minneapolis, and Indianapolis, and the programming for their facilities in 2023 and 2024. These communities average more than 10 major events annually, defined as events with greater than 40,000 attendees, beyond NFL games, and averaged 1.5 million visitors annually, double what our current stadium draws. In addition, these facilities also attracted additional events. But most importantly, this activity did not impact those cities' arenas. All those arenas saw more than 2 million visitors, comparable with what Rocket Arena sees today. Live events are still showing strength and have been growing as a form of desired entertainment since 2020. This includes concerts, wrestling, college and sports, touring competitions, and many other new performance experiences. Many visitors travel to cities for these events. Recent concerts and events here in Cleveland have seen more than half of attendees coming from out of the region, staying at hotels and enjoying more than just the event in our city. With the easy ability to draw visitors from the rest of Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, and Western New York, Cleveland should expect to see similar performance with an economic impact for downtown and the city as it is, and will continue to be the largest concentration of hotel rooms and visitor amenities in the region. I'll be pleased to discuss this event's analysis further in response to any questions. At the same time, the development of our lakefront will create a vibrant community asset that will be used far beyond 10 events a year. We don't have to agree. Community members and leaders have different views on different things all the time. But what we can do now is move forward together to ensure that our city and community are best positioned for future success, and this agreement is the path to do so. In our view, this proposed agreement reached by the parties moves the city and the region forward, represents a substantial investment towards the transformation of the downtown lakefront, and also advances the development of a domed stadium, which will benefit downtown, the city, and the region. Without these contributions, we will not be able to have the long-term impact that we all want to see happen for the community on the lakefront. This agreement addresses critical challenges to move our region forward so that we can fully maximize the economic impact of these developments and the total investment of more than $5 billion into this region. We endorse moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Ebersol. Mr. Skinner.
Hello, everybody. Scott Skinner, President, Executive Director of the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation. The City of Cleveland created NCWDC in 2023 to transform Cleveland's downtown lakefront into a world-class waterfront that drives economic growth while providing equitable waterfront access to Clevelanders. The city took the step to create NCWDC after extensive national research into best practices for executing waterfront development and infrastructure projects of this magnitude. Working collaboratively with the city, NCWDC has made meaningful progress in just 18 months. First, capital. Supported by Council's passage of the Shore to Corridor Shore TIF District, secured $150 million in federal and state grants for the City of Cleveland to build the North Coast Connector, allowing for a 2027 start of construction on a land bridge and a reimagined shoreway. Second, organizational capacity. Work with City Council to pass ordinances 561-2025 and 1061-2024, establishing Cleveland's first new community authority, a vital public-private financing tool that will contribute to the construction of infrastructure and public space on our lakefront. Third, public space. Leveraged $1 million in ARPA commitments approved by Council to build and program the North Coast Yard, a 1.5-acre pop-up park north of Brown Stadium that saw 25,000 unique visitors take advantage of recreation, entertainment, and small business programs from 70 different organizations, with visitors and partners both representing every ward in the city and 162 zip codes nationally. Fourth, due diligence. We completed significant due diligence and legal work to ensure that the downtown lakefront site is ready for development and enticing to developers. And fourth, development interest. We've released an RFQ for private development partners on the lakefront site and are currently vetting 18 legitimate development partners eager to invest and build a multitude of uses on our downtown lakefront. We plan to announce development partners and plans in the near future. We have tremendous momentum towards lakefront development, something Cleveland has pursued for generations. Working together, our lakefront can provide opportunities for free and accessible public space, can catalyze population and economic growth in our downtown, and can attract substantial private capital, driving regional and national visitors to our CBD. Two things are critical to keeping up this momentum: certainty around the stadium and additional capital for infrastructure. The settlement agreement between the city and HSG provides certainty that we will be leading the development of 50 acres with a pad-ready former stadium site. The $50 million contribution earmarked for lakefront development and the demolition of the existing stadium will not solve for every single infrastructure and public space need on the site, but it will allow us to make significant progress in the very near future and to attract private investment. Long term, it can catalyze growth in our downtown and allow Cleveland to finally achieve its goals of a transformed downtown lakefront. Without it, we do not have a foreseeable path to stadium demolition and the necessary infrastructure needed to facilitate development. The proposed settlement will facilitate near-term construction of permanent public space north of Brown Stadium, delivering on the lakefront goals we heard from an overwhelming number of Cleveland residents. It will allow us to move forward with development partners to deliver a world-class lakefront. It will contribute significantly to the many infrastructure needs on the site to facilitate vertical development, including bulkhead repairs, utility needs, and a new street grid. Finally, it will allow the necessary planning, design, and activation work to continue. NCWDC's sole goal and focus from our founding has been to develop a world-class lakefront in downtown Cleveland, and we are closer than we ever have been to achieving this generational goal. While we may prefer to develop the lakefront with the Cleveland Browns as an anchor, it is clear that in a few years' time, the Cleveland Browns will no longer play football in downtown Cleveland. This $50 million lakefront allocation and stadium demolition allows us to begin mitigating the impact of that move. The development of our downtown lakefront will not solve every challenge facing the city of Cleveland, but economically it can drive growth to our region, increase our tax base, while helping to keep downtown small businesses thriving. And collectively, it can reconnect us to a valued natural asset while giving Clevelanders and visitors alike access to the publicly owned land they have the right to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, as I said earlier, I want to give an opportunity to the council members who have not asked questions yet, to give them an opportunity to ask questions, and then revert back to the other council members. So, first and foremost, Councilman Christopher Harsh. I had to put you back on the agenda. Councilman Christopher Harsh, and then Councilwoman House Jones. Do we have any other council members that would like to, that have not spoken yet? And then I will put some of the other council members who would like to be back on the agenda back on there. Councilman Harrison? Did you say something?
No.
Okay. All right, so I have Harsh, House Jones, and then I'll go back to Casey Polensik Jones.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. My first question, just to whoever wants to answer this, maybe Mr. Silliman, through the chair, what is the Browns' current capital stack for constructing the Brook Park Stadium?
To the councilman through the chair, I am not aware of what their current capital stack is.
Through the chair, is anybody? Originally, they wanted $600 million from the state. They wanted $600 million from local government. That made $1.2 billion, and they were going to put $1.2 billion in and build a $2.4 billion project. With the county not contributing, they've got $600 million from the state. Does anybody know where they're rounding out the rest of their development finance?
To the councilman through the chair, my understanding from the public comments that Jimmy Haslam has made is that they have $600 million from the state, that they are continuing to seek additional dollars, but that they will finance the rest of the project privately if necessary to see the Brook Park project through.
And through the chair, then, has anybody heard about plans if they only have the $600 million, if they don't get additional government contributions in terms of like what the actual full scope of the plan is, if they're only working with $600 million in tax money?
Again, to the councilman through the chair, this is just based on public comments I've seen Mr. Haslam make, but I believe that they would privately finance the rest.
Okay. So it's a curiosity for me because it does get into the issue about whether or not Brook Park is ready on time and how long it takes them to build over there and whether or not we just end up with a warehouse surrounded by parking. Through the chair to Mr. Skinner, have the Browns agreed or refused to take part in the NCA's financial fundraising capacity currently at the stadium?
To the councilman through the chair, we have had preliminary conversations about what NCA participation could look like. They have not agreed or refused to that participation. They agreed to establish the new community authority, which was required to create the NCA district, but have not agreed yet to any NCA participation.
Through the chair, are other tenants on the lakefront already contributing and agreeing?
To the councilman through the chair, the only participants in the NCA currently are city-owned parking lots.
City-owned. So the city's found the ability to jump in and help out with this, but none of the other tenants on the lakefront have.
There are ongoing conversations with all tenants on the lakefront, and I envision that ultimately several of them will participate. I'm optimistic. However, and we've spoken about this before, with the new community authority, the real intent and purpose and the real value captured from NCAs are in future development. So as we talk to future builders of multifamily, hospitality, entertainment, recreation, they will come to the table knowing that NCA participation is part of the deal with whatever lease or development agreement they enter into, and that is what can be used to fund infrastructure, public space, et cetera.
Okay, the reason I'm asking, Mr. Chair, is that, you know, if the Browns are committed to the development of the lakefront, they have an opportunity right now to help us raise money for it, and they're not taking that opportunity. They're actually skipping out on the opportunity to contribute money to the NCA, which would help us redevelop the lake. And instead, they're just negotiating this $100 million, which we've already cleared up is only $50 million for the lakefront. And, you know, to Councilman Polensik's point about the $100 million being a figure that floated around here for a long, long, long time, it just sort of like, you know, leads to the other elephant in the room, which is a lot of people in this building don't believe that the administration ever intended to negotiate with the Browns to keep them here in the first place. That the whole thing is just smoke and mirrors to coordinate the move out of town. And that's why the NCAA was brought up years ago as a way to prepare for their vacation. It's not like, it's kind of an open secret, right? A lot of people just don't think the administration ever really wanted to keep them. Developing the lakefront has been this sort of panacea, the silver bullet solution to what ails Cleveland for so long, for almost a century, that the belief that any development to the lakefront is going to be good for the city is just sort of like taken hold in most people's imaginations. And there's a big question that we all should have about whether or not, what we actually end up with this in a couple of years when, to Mr. Silliman's point, the Browns have realized that they're not getting more than 4 or 5 extra events a year, and they're poaching everything from downtown, and our revenues trail, and a handful of hotels or apartment buildings on the lakefront don't exactly generate revenue on the scale that we thought they would, that we're left with a prettier view of the lake that very few people will ever take advantage of. Because by my estimation, Edgewater Beach is full in the summer and very rarely gets closed because of capacity. It only really closes for capacity on 4th of July. Otherwise, we are meeting the beach-going needs of the west side. And I know that there's another beach up on the east side that gets pretty good attendance. And Voinovich Park is right here. And see how many people are enjoying it today down here to see the beautiful lakefront. I actually don't see anybody down there at all. But we've had that park for years, and it just sort of defies the notion that developing the lakefront is this perfect plan to resolve Cleveland's problems. I'm asking this and going off on a bit of a tangent because a lot of this just feels like smoke and mirrors. It just feels like the dog and pony show, whatever analogy we want to use. It seems that the mayor made up his mind when he got elected that the Browns were leaving. The $100 million notion got into this room so many years ago that it's hard not to believe that Councilman Plensick's correct, that this has all just been the plan. So it is discouraging. I know it's not supposed to be emotional. It feels like that we're being backed into an alleyway and told there's only one way out. And either you take the way out or you die in the alleyway. And I know some of my colleagues will die in the alleyway, even if it's not good for the city, even if it's the wrong choice for the future of Cleveland, would rather make that decision than take the only offer that we're being presented with. So my last question, and I do apologize, I do have one more question through the chair. Is there any capacity, and this might be for the law director, where'd he go? Oh, he's over here. Is there any capacity for this body to amend this ordinance knowing that it is in agreement with HSG? It has to be a two-party agreement, right? So what capacity do we actually have to amend this? Or do any amendments we propose have to go back to HSG for their willingness to comply with them before we can make it legal?
Yeah, to the councilman through the chair, I'll start with your question and then also want to address your kind of overall statement. Any changes to the term sheet, any changes to the legislation, because a negotiation is always two parties, any change that we make single-handedly will then have to go back to HSG for their review to see if they are still interested in entering into this settlement, given whatever changes are made to the term sheet. And so I think that answers your question.
So whatever amendments we make have to be approved by them before they can become legal agreements?
That's correct.
That makes
Yeah,
sense.
there
I
has to
thought-
be two
yeah,
parties to sign
right.
the agreement, and so any changes
Just
that are
wanted to
material
clarify.
would need to be approved. I also do want to say that this administration has wholeheartedly tried to keep the Browns in Cleveland. I understand your perspective and want to respect what you've said about your feelings about the matter, but the facts are that the mayor and his team, our team, has worked very hard to protect the general fund and to keep the Browns in Cleveland. We worked on a plan for years, assuming that the Browns would stay. And so we are in a situation where they have chosen not to stay in Cleveland, but that is despite our best efforts to keep them here.
Sure. I appreciate that. I understand that that's going to be the response from the administration. It's just going to be a tough sale for a lot of us that have been in this building for the last 4 years and have heard, contrary opinions that have borne out in terms of term sheets, right? So this is exactly what they said was going to happen 4 years ago. Like
Councilman
to a
Harsh,
T. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, if we
I'm all
could,
done.
I think Mr. Skinner wanted to respond to you as well,
Sure.
and if any of the other panelists wanted to respond. Yes.
And to the councilman through the chair, so there's three things I wanted to respond to with that, and I appreciate your comments. I was not directly involved in any negotiations here for the Browns to stay or through the settlement. All that I can say is being sort of adjacent to a lot of the users, including both the Browns and the city who are represented on my board, that is not the feeling that I would associate with. The city worked very hard, and their goal was clearly to keep the Browns here. Second, you mentioned the NCA as sort of a strategy, understanding they may leave. I would just want to clarify, the NCA was envisioned in the formation docs of my organization, which operated under the assumption that the Browns were staying. That's why they were represented on my board. The NCA was talked about and envisioned 2 to 3 years ago as part of the sort of initial process of forming the organization as a way to partially sustain it in the long term and to facilitate some development of public space and infrastructure. And then third, on the importance of sort of lakefront development, I think I said in my statement, I agree with you. Developing our lakefront is not going to solve every challenge we face as a city. But when I think of all of the challenges we face as a city, I think that a lot of them are downstream of a declining tax base. And building on the assets that we have, developing our lakefront, our riverfront, making downtown a more thriving place that students at CSU and CASE want to stay, that companies want to relocate, those are things that I think developing the lakefront is not the only contribution to that, but can actually contribute to it. And the last point I'd like to make, Edgewater is a fantastic beach. Voinovich is a great park, expertly maintained. And there are other sort of beaches being planned along the lakefront. But we need to sort of stop thinking about the lakefront as a series of individual sites and think about it holistically and regionally. And while this site will likely not have a beach, will likely not look like Edgewater, there are other ways to bring people down to our lakefront through public space, promenades, seating, restaurants, hotels, and apartments, more sort of economic development focused. So I just want to provide that context that we're not going to have a beach at every single spot of our lakefront, but it does contribute to a broader regional vision of leveraging Lake Erie.
I understand that vision. I think that it's just very convenient that the vision for developing lakefront and moving the Browns go hand in hand. They work very, very convenient to each other.
Yeah,
Mr. President, I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
To the councilman through the chair, I would add that we started this process developing the lakefront with the Browns, right? Like they were intimately involved in the master planning process, are represented on my board for a reason, and I personally very much wanted them to stay there.
Anything else, Councilman? All right, Councilwoman House Jones, and then I'll go back to the panelists. Okay, Councilwoman House Jones, then Gray, then I'll go back to the panelists.
Thank you. Through the chairman, to the team here, I did have a question from a resident that wanted to ask, I guess this is to the administration, why was the Brown site not considered to be an extension for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? That way, creating, more opportunities to, get into some of the, musical festival scenes, as well as, hosting the Rock and Roll Hall ceremonies, things of that nature. They said they've never heard any conversation, so why hasn't the administration not embraced that?
Yeah, to the councilwoman through the chair, and I might ask Scott to add into this too. I think the timing of when the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was doing their extension and the timing of, we still aren't at a place with full certainty on the Browns because council hasn't passed the settlement, didn't quite line up. But I think looking into the future, there is a future where we do want to think about how the site, the 50 acres of site, corresponds with all of the existing assets, not only the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but also the Convention Center, the Hilton, all of our malls, to make it all an interconnected space downtown where we do leverage the relationship with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I don't think the timing lined up for an extension on this site for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's needs, but that isn't to say that there won't be an opportunity in the future to partner with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and really try to increase their footprint and their impact in the city.
To the councilman through the chair, that's all 100% correct. The only very, very small addition I would make is we are in the process of reviewing submissions from private development partners to work with on the site. There are a multitude of uses that include multifamily, hospitality, recreation, and entertainment. So ultimate decisions have not been made there, but the Rock Hall is represented on my board as well, and they are very much included in all the conversations on what the future of that site can look like.
Thank you for that. And then to follow up to the chair, actually to all of the panelists who are here. If I am a single mom that lives in Springbrook Apartments, my children, I have a first grader and eighth grader that goes to Mary B. Martin School, and I actually probably am one of the seasonal workers that work at the Brown Stadium. Why would I care about this today? And why would I support it today?
Anybody want to give an answer to that? Administration? Anybody?
Sure. To the councilwoman through the chair, I can start and would love to hear from our panelists as well. I think your question is why would sort of a resident in Cleveland, like you described, care about this? To the extent that they work at the Brown Stadium, I think that they would have an interest in where the stadium is located. But I think generally, every resident of the city of Cleveland has an interest in seeing our region and our city grow. They have an interest in us bringing in more businesses, more people, more resources to the city, because when we increase the number of resources coming into the city, that means we're able to provide better services. So I know it's an extension of what we are looking at with our economic impact, but being able to invest in a world-class lakefront is an important strategy for being able to be the type of city that we all want Cleveland to be, that provides good services for every single resident.
So I'm going to give you a context, because again, the average worker here in the city of Cleveland, a lot of times it is in this office kind of retail space, fast food worker. And again, when I gave this very specifically, this is a parent who has two children, one in the school, and I said two children, one in a time where their school is closing, and then you have an eighth grader who have to decide where they're going to high school next year. And when you think of many times their mode of transportation, so in my community, I think about 35% of people do not have a car. So they depend on public transportation. And a lot of times people are talking about a vision that is 5-10 years away. The reality of the residents that I represent, they have to think about today. They don't have the luxury to think about tomorrow. And so as people are putting out from the Haslams and everybody else that serves on these boards and everything else, it is cute to think about tomorrow. I mean, like years in advance. But the reality is they do not have that luxury to think about 5 to 10 years from now. They got to think about today. They got to think about 6 months. So you talking about, yes, we're going to have improved services. That's not the reality. You know what I'm saying? And so that's what I'm saying is, like, if you're trying to have me sell something of some sort, what you all are selling, they're not buying. They're not going to buy in any form or fashion. So I'm asking in a very real way, why do I care today? Because that's the reality.
Yeah, to the councilwoman through the chair, I mean, I think my response, and this would be my response, is we're looking at a situation where the city could be left with nothing. And we want the city to be left with $100 million of value that we can invest in the city of Cleveland. And so why we should care today is we're looking at a situation where we could end up with nothing. In fact, we could end up with a $40 million liability with the stadium that then we'd have to solve for at some point in the future, or $100 million in our pocket. And I think every resident in the city of Cleveland would understand why we would rather have $100 million in our pocket than a $40 million liability on our lakefront.
Councilwoman Jones, through the chair, I would add that I think one of the things I've been most concerned about throughout this saga, if things went the way that they are and the Browns relocated, is who ends up with the bill for dealing with the stadium. And I know there are a diversity of opinions about whether the stadium could be repurposed or reused in some way. In my opinion, one of the greatest risks to the city was that the Browns would leave and the city would be saddled with the responsibility for tearing down the stadium, prepping the site at the expense of tens of millions of dollars that goes straight to the heart of city services. And I know, that in some ways is more forward-looking than the constituents that you're hearing from are thinking about. But the impact on the city's ability to provide core services is one that I know I've thought about a lot throughout this process. I know it's one that you all are hearing from your constituents about. And, one of the major virtues I see in this settlement is that the city of Cleveland and the taxpayers and residents of the city of Cleveland are relieved of responsibility for what happens to the stadium. And that has real impact on services and what the city is able to do.
So I'll end with this. So for Clevelanders who are listening to this, I hope you all really understand how politics plays a part in our lives. For every Clevelander who is upset about your baby school closing, be very clear. This was a state decision where in the state of Ohio, we value investing in billionaires versus everyday working people. And so if you do not do anything else, I hope you are registered to vote. I hope you absolutely vote and understand how people are working hand over foot against everyday working people. Be very clear who is sitting on these boards making decisions for you, but don't live around you, don't shop with you, or don't work where you are. Everyday working people absolutely need to get a plan because, baby, the billionaires and millionaires are in this city making all the decisions to ensure that your dollars work for them and not your dollars working for you. And I'm going to say that and I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman House Jones. I'm going to go to Councilwoman Deborah Gray, Councilman Anthony Hairston, and then once again, I'll revert back to the other members. And Councilman Bishop, and then I'll revert back to the other members after that.
Thank you, Chair. I just wonder, and this is a leeway from Councilwoman House statement that she closed that I'm going to open up. I would like to ask one question. Who will receive all the revenue, Chair, to the team? Who will receive all the revenue when the stadium goes to Brook Park? Where is the revenue going to go? Is it going to go into Brook Park neighborhood, or or will it go into, will all the revenue go to Haslund? But also, will the revenue go back to the businesses, and they don't have many businesses as Cleveland? So who will get all the revenue per se when they move to Brook Park?
Ms. Trevisano, you want to take first crack at that, or did Mr. Ebersol, anybody?
Because the city is losing the revenue, as Councilwoman House said. Who's going to receive all the revenue? And is there a breakdown for that? Thank you.
I'm going to ask if is it Executive Director Trevisano or? Okay. Ms. Trevisano and also Mr. Ebersol, if they both can respond to that.
Yeah, to the councilwoman through the chair, I don't have any details of agreements between Haslam Sports Group and the city of Brook Park. My understanding, though, is that this is a private enterprise where things like ticket sales, parking revenue would generally go to Haslam Sports Group as the owner of the facility. I'm sure that there are tax benefits by virtue of where that stadium is located that would also benefit Brook Park and presumably the county. But I don't have the details of exactly how the revenue will flow in the Brook Park Stadium.
Mr. Ebersol?
Yeah, I don't really have anything much more to add to that. It's similar to how it works today. The tax revenue goes to the taxing jurisdiction. The ticket sales go to the organization. Parking goes to whoever owns the parking lots. Concessions go to concessions,
So to answer the councilwoman's question, and Councilman, Mr. Silliman, if you want to, because I was just going to cut straight to the chase.
Well,
Mr. Silliman.
what I can speak to is right now with the existing stadium, to the chair, to Councilwoman Gray. Right now, the stadium generates income taxes it generates admission taxes, it generates parking taxes. Those all go to the city general fund
Right.
right now. And the city's economic study says that those total 11 million a year. Okay, when that stadium closes down, all those taxes will be assessed by Brook Park instead of the city of Cleveland. And what the Browns have said to the state of Ohio is that the extra revenues from those taxes, and when they say extra, they're assuming a lot more activity than we get today. Those will be pledged to the state of Ohio to reimburse not the unclaimed funds, but the general fund of the state for the 600 million that they're allocating. Is that everybody's understanding? So just speaking as to tax revenues, not as to other things, that's my understanding.
So Councilwoman, we don't get anything.
Right.
Let's just be clear, and let's not sugarcoat this. This is part of the conversation, and you asked probably one of the most important questions in this entire conversation. We get nothing. And that is the problem with this discussion, and that's the reason why this 100 million is so critical for us to discuss.
Exactly.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that important question. And like I said, there's conversations that people are going to say if the 30 million residual impact come from hotels and other visitors from outside the region. I guess there was a big concert that was a 2-day concert, and they estimated that approximately 65% came out of the region. However, at the end of the day, if that money goes out to Brook Park, most of it will go either to the state and some of it will go to Brook Park. I actually think Brook Park is a little bit at risk in this conversation too. And I don't think everybody's looking at this with a very, very thorough lens. And I'm glad that you asked the basic question, what do we get out of this? Not much, if anything. All right, we're going to go to Councilman Hairston, Bishop, and then I'll go back to the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we start finance in 3 minutes, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. Just through the chair to Ms. Trevisano and whoever else from the administration. Correct me if I'm wrong, before the discussion came up about the Browns leaving, and as you all were coming into City Hall, that there was a plan submitted by the Browns that looked at ways that the lakefront can be developed while the Browns, if the Browns were still in the city, correct? Through the chair.
That's right, to the councilman. There was a comprehensive renovation strategy for the lakefront stadium that would have activated the stadium beyond just Browns games days and would have made it a more active use, and then development around that site.
Sure. Thank you. And through the chair to Ms. Trevisano, the Bibb administration, if I also recall some of the interactions that you all were supportive, or at least in conversations and discussions around the plan that they had submitted, right, to see whether it fit your all's future of the lakefront enhancements, correct?
Yeah, to the councilman through the chair, not only were there conversations, those negotiations started in 2022 to discuss how the city could support a renovated stadium. We also took steps to then do a comprehensive master plan with the community for a lakefront stadium and secured $150 million in state and federal money to build a land bridge that will, continue to support lakefront development, but would have benefited a renovated lakefront stadium had Haslam Sports Group chose to stay in downtown Cleveland.
Got it. Thank you for that. And through the chair to Ms. Trevisano, whoever, will probably get you as the only person from the actual administration here. I recall, as you came through my committee as chair of development planning, sustainability, that we had a fallout a bit about overspending of a contract, that city planning had a contract with the outside agency to help us develop plans that it was either some sort of renderings that looked at the stadium being here and also looked at the stadium not being here. Is that correct, Mrs. Trevisano?
If I could, is that James Comer Field?
That's right. To the councilman through the chair, there was a piece of legislation brought to DPS to allocate additional dollars to JCFO who was the consultant who worked on the master plan. In addition to working on the master plan, they did a kind of initial study to see if the land bridge would still make sense, even if there was not a stadium on the site. The answer is yes, it does still make sense. But that was part of the conversation at committee.
Sure. And if I recall through the chair to Mr. Fasano, that the initial work that you all had them complete was centered around the stadium and the team still being at the site, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then subsequently, once the news broke and the team decided to make a decision through the chair that they wanted to leave, we went back to the table and asked them now to help us develop a plan, or not when the news broke, but as the chatter continued, that there was a plan should they leave the lakefront, and we did not want to be left without any sort of idea or path forward about how we can develop that site there should they decide to leave, correct?
That's right. To the councilman through the chair, we kind of took a parallel path. One was a litigation strategy to try to do whatever we could to keep the Browns on the lakefront, but then also simultaneously did some planning to think about what could happen on the lakefront if the Browns were to leave, and in fact partnered with Scott's organization, NCWDC, to release an RFQ seeking development partners for up to 50 acres of land, which includes the land where the stadium is.
Got it. Okay. And through the chair, and I'll wrap up shortly. I just ask these questions because I hear comments. I hear all the talk about whether this is a dog and pony show, this is smoke and mirrors, this is all these wild accusations that I keep hearing by so many people. And when you think about where we started to where we are now, I would say that's not the case. That in fact there were genuine conversations happening from the administration and the council and our partners on the outside of finding ways to keep the stadium here, the team here, and also develop the lakefront. Because if I recall, we were also discussing how maybe if the airport should be closed to add more space for greater development along the lakefront through the chair. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, to the
Okay.
councilman.
Again, I'm just asking these questions to make sure I'm understanding. I've been here, I've been a part of a lot of these conversations to make sure I haven't misunderstood or whether my understanding of these situations are not correct. And so I guess I stand correct today that, it seems to me that there has been genuine conversations to try to keep the Browns here. Unfortunately, when business owners make their decision, they make their decision no matter who likes it, right? In some ways, it's unfortunate. In some ways, do we agree? No, we don't agree. However, I think that we also have to understand that we're here to make tough decisions as well, right? And not every decision is going to be the decision that folks want us to make, but that's what you do when you serve in these roles. And I think that the conversation does not have to continue to be this or that. It can be. We can have both conversations. How do we support the development of key engines that helps drive our city economically, but also support the neighborhoods as well, right? And we've seen that. Our time. Our committee has helped drive the $100 million housing investment fund, $50 million sites fund for good jobs, right? I mean, those are real things that are taking place right in our neighborhoods. And so to sit here and spew that, we are only caring about one group of people in our community, I think is just not right. I think that we should, and I'm one of the council members who's not going to sit here and make the claims that we are only considering and taking care of those who have the most of everyone else, because I don't believe that to be the case. That we are making parallel investments in certain parts of our city as we are doing in others, right? Now, we can argue all day whether they're at the same level or not. Hey, we won't always agree. And Mr. Chair, through the chair to Mr. Fasano, I think we set the mayor out and his team on the path, and we asked him to do a job, right? Now, some of us may agree with the job that he's done. Some does not agree with the job that he's done. You know, and that's for the debate to continue with that. But I think that, you know, if we give somebody a task and they come back and they've done the task, then we need to find ways to support the work that they've done, right? You know, without the harsh criticism, I guess, for the work that in the deal that they were able to cut with the forces we had against us. I mean, I don't understand how, you know, folks just don't want to believe that we just were up against, you know, some serious forces through the state, right? The state legislature clearly was not on our side. The Supreme Court is not on our side. They haven't been on our side, right? Look at how they addressed us when we tried to invoke our home rule, right? I mean, there's just so many examples and so many instances that we can point to that tells us that, you know, we do not have the support, right? And at the moment that the $600 million was given, we knew then. We knew then. So at that point, you have to do what? You have to pivot and find a way that the taxpayers of this city are not left holding the bag, right? And I guess I'm curious to the chair, to whomever want to answer this, whether on our side or your side, you know, if we don't believe $100 million was enough and that we could have gotten more, well, I'm all ears to understand how we could have gotten more and the ways in which that whoever believes we could have gotten more was going to achieve that.
Yeah, to the councilman through the chair, I think the mayor said it best when he was here a couple weeks ago, that if there was more to get, he would have gotten it. There was no more to get.
And through the chair, you all have shown us what you've gotten, how you were able to get it. So I guess I'm interested for those who keep saying that we could have gotten more, and how, but does not tell me how we could have gotten more. Tell me how could we have gotten more, and how much? Exactly. It's all talk, all talk. So again, a great man, a great wise man once said, "It is what it is," right? And, you know, the facts are the facts, reality is reality. No matter how much you try to distort the truth, it's the truth. And either we are going to work together to try to make the best of what, you know, we have here, or we're going to continue to spew and create division instead of trying to come together and move this community forward and continue to work on a relationship with a regional partner of ours and helping and working with them to make our city better. And so, Mr. Chair, I'll end it with that, and thank you for the time.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for your comments. You had some very good comments. Councilman Kevin Bishop, and then I'll go back to the list.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I got a...
And all of the guests for the Finance Committee, please be patient. This is a very important conversation, so I'm going to wrap this up after we have a few more questions and hear from our panelists, and then we'll pivot immediately into Finance. Please proceed, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank the panel of experts for coming here and sharing us their vision and their suggestions for us to move forward with this very important topic about the Browns. One question I have to clarify in number 3 of the term sheet, it says the parties agreed that the lease between the Browns and the city expires February 1st, 2029, but the Browns will have an option subject to an amendment to the current lease to extend the lease on the same terms for a period of 1 year. So what is the subject to an amendment to the current lease really actually mean? Can anybody clarify that for me, please?
Yeah, I can try, and if you need more, we'll ask our law director to come up and respond. But we can't just use the settlement agreement to come up with the terms of the extension. We need to actually amend the lease to allow for 2 1-year extensions. So the Browns have to give the city 1 year notice if they want to extend for a year. So if they decide in 2028 that they want to extend their lease from 29 to 2030, they have to tell us in 2028, and then they'd have to do that cycle again to do another extension, but they can only extend until 2031.
Okay. So now we have heard here today about some potential amendments to the current term sheet for 2E and 2F. Is there any suggestions for an amendment to the number three on this lease, about the terms, if the Browns were to extend the lease, is there any suggestions on any amendments that we can make to make this deal a little bit better for the city? Through the chair.
To the councilman, I think that some of the items that we've talked about as it relates to the lease amendment have really focused on the city's capital repair obligations during that lease extension and up until then. Any changes to the term sheet, as I mentioned earlier, would have to then it would reopen the negotiation. So we know that what's in the term sheet, the Haslam Sports Group has agreed to. Any tweaks to that term sheet could make them walk away from the table. So I don't know the impact of any changes, but I do know that any changes would, reopen the deal and could subject them to say, never mind, we aren't going to agree to this $100 million. I don't know this specifically, but I do know it's important to them that they have these 2 one-year options.
Okay, all right. All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, and I will say to that, and I thank you for bringing that up, please give any recommendations for amendments to our policy and research staff. And with all due respect to the administration as well as the Browns, we all should have thought about that before we agreed on a term sheet. Amen. Because then it would have been easier for this council to be able to say, this is what we agreed to. And I think that's the rub where a lot of council members, and I've expressed this to the Browns, and I've expressed this to the administration, that if we were included in the conversation and say we mutually, as we did in instances like Bedrock, it would have gone a lot smoother, and we would have had a lot more to go along with. But I know that for whatever reason that didn't happen, but that's the reason why I think we find ourselves at this crossroads as we are right now, okay? Thank you, Councilman. Please give any recommendation for amendments to Mr. Titron, and then also we'll go over them, and we'll have that discussion when myself and our leadership have conversations with the administration, okay? I'll now go to the, yes. At this time, right now, I would rather get all of the amendments that we recommend, because there are some other things that I am going to look at as far as my colleague Councilman Slife said, as far as in use of some of these dollars. I am not trying to dramatically alter a lot of things. I know that a lot of people have said take it or leave it. I think Councilman Hart said that as well, and I think that is unfair to this council. Therefore, we're going to do our due diligence to at least get any requests that we have, and then we'll have that discussion and within our right to negotiate what we believe is the best thing for the citizens of the city of Cleveland.
On that point, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and really there is no point in Robert's rules as we approach 2026. I am not going to continue to allow that, because Councilman, you actually do have time on the agenda, so I would ask if you could just acknowledge your remarks in the time that I'm putting you back on the list for. I'll go to Casey, Polensek, and then Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, before I get into my remarks, I want to address something that was said at the table, and that is, as elected officials, we don't always have to agree. But I think part of how we govern is that we can look at things differently, disagree, but come to a mutual understanding. I don't think I would ever sit at the table and tell anybody that they were wrong in believing or fighting for something that they believe in. I'm going to be one of those guys who die in the alley on this situation, but I guess that's the difference between being born and raised and being a true Clevelander and being a transplant from somebody else and representing the city. With that being said, Mr. Chairman,
Councilman, I would ask if you could refrain from those kind of allegations. I think everybody loves Cleveland the same. I just
I'm
want
not
to
saying they don't.
All right,
With
but I
that
mean,
being
I just
said,
think
Mr.
that was
Chairman,
subjective, but please proceed.
Mr. Chairman and Mr. Ebersol, does Jimmy Haslam or anybody in the HSG group sit on the board of the Greater Cleveland Partnership?
Yes.
All right. With that being said, we know why the Greedy Corporate Partnership has taken their stance, but I'd like to move to the Downtown Cleveland Incorporated. And a press release that was put out, and if I can just read real quick, Downtown Cleveland, Inc. is disappointed with the Greater Cleveland Partnership Executive Committee's decision to support the Browns relocation. We strongly disagree with their position. DCI is uniquely qualified to speak on this issue, as our sole mission is to strengthen the heart of the city and region. This is about more than who supports moving the Browns from the Cleveland to Brook Park. It's about what the move would cost the city, the region, and Ohio taxpayers. here's the bottom line. Building a new stadium in suburban Cleveland is a risky use of taxpayer dollar that undermines the public and private investment already transforming the city's core. Renovating the existing stadium isn't just viable, it's vital to the region's continued growth. There are 3 core issues at stake. This move isn't additive, it's a shift. The financing model is high risk, low reward, and 3, reinvesting in downtown delivers more or less. That came from a press statement from Downtown Cleveland Alliance. And then in May of 2022, Mr. Deemer, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Deemer, you put out an op-ed in Cranes. And in it, to paraphrase, that's what makes the Cleveland Browns' push to move the stadium to Brook Park so baffling and so dangerous. This isn't just about football. It's about dispersing density, weakening the core, and undermining the very momentum we've worked so hard to build. Downtown stadiums drive foot traffic to nearby businesses, connect people across neighborhoods, and generate tens of millions in tax revenues that support services citywide. Removing that anchor and the economic ripple effects it creates from downtown Cleveland is a deliberate step backward for downtown, the city of Cleveland and the entire region. It's not an additive investment. It's the cannibalization of a core regional asset at the expense of shared prosperity. The decisions we make today will undoubtedly shape our future. We can choose to deepen our investments we can choose to deepen our investment in what's working or walk away from it all. For the sake of the regional economy, our identity, and our future, we must choose to build on our momentum, not abandon it. Let's keep Cleveland's core strong. Let's double down on downtown. And Mr. Chairman and Mr. Deemer, you are the spokesperson for, as you said in your opening remarks, businesses, downtown investments and everything. Maybe sometimes we need to remind people how supportive this council has been to people that you represent who now are supporting the move of the Cleveland Browns. These are just members of Downtown Cleveland DCI who have received, with the support of this council, TIFs to invest in downtown. K&D Group, Bedrock, which you represent, GBX, Sandvik Architects, the Millennial Companies, the Landmark Companies, the Frangos Group, Skyline Investment, Prime Properties LTD, Geist Properties Management, Westtown Inc., NRP Group, Ozone Construction Companies, all came to this council in this city looking for tax increments to stay and invest in downtown Cleveland. And now you're sitting here, even though just as recently as a couple of months ago, we passed ordinance 1456-2025, taxing our own city property for the SID for downtown and giving the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, or Incorporated, an additional $500,000 to help us build downtown. And then, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Deemer, I understand why the greedy corporate partnership doesn't like the city of Cleveland. They're more into the G than the C. I understand our Water Alliance because you have a job to do, right? And that's your goal. I know Mr. Silliman, but for downtown Cleveland to say to us, after taking that stance so strongly the way you did against GCP, and having those beliefs, for you to sit here at the table today, you have to explain to us, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Deemer, why? Why this shift? Why the change in heart? Why are all of these people who've invested in downtown and we've supported now saying, yes, take one of the core pieces to downtown and move it outside the city?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Councilman Casey, I'll go back to my opening remarks, and as I stated at the outset, we stand by everything we've said over the last several months and the last year or two as this saga has unfolded. And I don't believe for a minute that we've changed our position and our desire to maintain the stadium and the Browns in downtown. If I saw a path to doing that, we'd be having a very different conversation. As I said in my opening remarks, when the state of Ohio decided to support the stadium relocation to the tune of $600 million, from our perspective, from my perspective, the die was cast. At that point, it became about making the best deal possible for the city of Cleveland in the event of a relocation. And I think that we're having spirited discussion at the table today about the nature of the agreement. In our opinion, the mayor and his team were in the best position to decide that point of maximum leverage to evaluate the strength of the various lawsuits that were pending and get a financial settlement out of the Haslam Sports Group that would support the city of Cleveland. I think the choice for the city wasn't, $100 million or some higher number. It was zero or some number. And again, we can debate the strength of the number. We can debate the uses. In our judgment, in my judgment, the mayor and his team were in the best position to decide that point of maximum leverage and strike the deal that's been brought forward today. But I don't think for a minute that we are, as an organization or as a downtown, or me personally, are supporting the move of the Browns and the stadium outside of downtown. We have fought this every step of the way. We've left everything out on the field. And if there was a different path forward that we saw, again, we'd be having a very different conversation.
And Mr. Chairman and Mr. Deeman, I guess that's the difference between, as I said earlier, dying in the alley, because I don't want to misspeak, right? So that's the difference between dying in the alley. And as we have to sit here and we have to support everything that goes on downtown Cleveland, and we do a lot, and internally amongst council members, we have our disagreements because we understand how vital downtown is to the city of Cleveland. But what the other side of this table, aside from the administration, doesn't realize is there's a whole heck of a lot more to this city than just this downtown. I said, aside from you guys, there's a whole heck of a lot more. And I'm going to tell you, tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., I will be on West 138th and 39th off Lakewood Heights Boulevard. And you know what I'm going to be doing? I'm going to be myself leaf blowing a street full of leaves because we can't get leaf pickup over there from the administration. And that's me taking care of the other residents who live in the city of Cleveland. And that's what you guys seem to forget about, are the people who live in Glenville, the people who live in West Park, people who live in Old Brooklyn and Fairfax. As Councilwoman House said, people who have no desire to see a developed downtown because they're living paycheck to paycheck. So when you go home to wherever it is you go home, know that we do have people in this city, people on this side of the table that actually want to take care of the nuts and bolts of the city. So go tell your little billionaire buddy who's buying everything around town to go play in his own sandbox over there. And if you think getting $100 million is going to make you sleep better at night, take your $100 million and let him continue to do what he wants to do. But for somebody like me who's just too blue collar, to look at him and say, you know what, if it's take it or leave it, keep your money. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to take care of the people, because none of that $100 million, as we've already heard, are going to the streets of the city of Cleveland. Not one dime of it's going to end up going to the streets of the city of Cleveland. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Casey. Councilman Michael Polinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, my colleagues. And I want to concur with Councilwoman House and Councilman Casey. But I want to say to the folks that are here at the table, to both the Greater Cleveland Partnership and to the Downtown Cleveland Alliance, at any time did either group recommend the city move on 170 acres next to the stadium in Brook Park for the airport? Did any of you groups ever look at the global picture, how that 170 acres right next to Burke, right next to Hopkins International Airport, a landlocked airport. Did you ever make any recommendations about the city acquiring that property? Any group?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Polensek, our organization has not, with regard to the stadium, our entire focus was wherever the site may be, whether it was the existing site or another site that could be found in the greater downtown area. Our focus was on keeping the stadium
I
in the city
understand
and
that, but I'm
downtown.
talking specifically with a landlocked airport, looking at this globally and from a metropolitan's perspective. Did either group recommend that the city acquired 170 acres out there in Brook Park? No.
No.
No. Okay. Okay, I want that for the record. Councilman Casey touched upon your statement, Mr. Deemer, and the comments of other individuals as pertains to the possible relocation of the Browns out of town, out of the city. What I'm told, because we keep hearing about the $600 million in the lobbying that took place in Columbus by the Haslam Group, and we know they have fat checkbooks, so we understand their ability to mobilize supporters in Columbus. What I've heard from people in Columbus is that there was, outside of what we were hearing here in Cleveland, there was really no lobbying effort in Columbus by the Greater Cleveland Partnership or the Downtown Cleveland Alliance against the $600 million. And I've heard that from people in Columbus. There was no lobbying effort. That we were up here, we were holding our you-know-what, our rear ends, and there was no, we heard these public comments, but there was no lobbying effort in light of the alleged influence we have on both boards against support coming out of Columbus. And then also along the same lines, was there ever an official vote taken by either group, by the general membership, whether to support the Browns going to Brook Park? So I will ask you, Mr. Deemer, was there ever a vote taken by the general membership to support that?
Mr. Chairman, Councilman Polensek, the boards of Downtown Cleveland Alliance, Downtown Cleveland Improvement Corporation, and the Superior Arts Improvement Corporation, all are which part of our organization, all voted to support keeping the stadium in downtown.
Okay. So, again, and I'm going to ask David, as it pertains to, was there ever a vote taken by the full board to support the move to Brook Park?
To the councilman, the executive committee made a vote.
The executive committee?
Correct, yes.
But the full board never had the ability to vote?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, my honorable colleagues, we could talk about one bad misstep after another here. And again, I was here for I'm the only one left here from the full court press that was put on then by the council and the administration to get the Browns, the naming rights back here, the colors back here, and to get the Browns back here. It was a full court press by all involved, by the council, by the corporate community, business community, the civic community. It was a full court press. I got to tell you, fellas, there was no full court press in Columbus here. There was no full court press to oppose what was taking place. And Stevie Wonder could see what was going on in Columbus. I mean, the lobbying effort that was underway in Columbus by the SH3 group. And it's just mind-boggling. To back up what Ken Silliman said, as I've said it repeatedly over the last several months, not only are they going after Rocket, because I talked to him on the phone. He told me he's going to build a 500-room hotel out there. That's what he told me, Jimmy. And that he wants to, I think it was 50 events, if I'm not mistaken, out there. Well, you know where those events are going to come from? They're coming from Rocket. They're coming from Huntington Convention Center. And I'll tell you where they're really coming from is Playhouse Square. And why there was not a full-court press by all of these institutions and businesses who are all now privately moaning, you know, and squealing like extras from a Deliverance movie, just whining about the possibility of losing jobs and losing all this investment downtown. It's just, where was the lobbying effort? Where was the full court press in Columbus to say you can't do this to the county and the city of Cleveland? I did not see it. When you know what I learned growing up in being born in Glenville and raised in Collinwood, when you go to war, you go to war. When you're going to fight, you go to the mattresses. That's the way I was raised. Nobody went to the mattresses here. Nobody made a full court press in Columbus to say you can't do this here. With all the people, influential people that sit on these boards and an executive committee, where was the fight? There was no fight that I could see. And I was told that repeatedly in Columbus. Where are they? They're missing in action. If there's a fight going on, it's a stealth fight. There was no fight in Columbus by two of the critical groups here, the Greater Cleveland Partnership and the Downtown Cleveland Alliance. There was no fight. So here we find ourselves today confronted with this deal. Mr. Chairman, I will make recommendations to the staff. As I've stated publicly, as the deal stands, I cannot support it. I felt it could have been negotiated differently. I think we've all touched upon that. The council was left out of it. We were totally left out of the discussions. And so here we find ourselves today, and I look upon this downtown plan, and again, I will say this again, and it's been said at the table. I don't see any east side neighborhood. I can't speak to my west side colleagues, but I don't see any east side neighborhood benefiting or receiving any of the dollars that are allegedly pledged to the lakefront. I look at what's transpired with our east side neighborhoods. Again, 28 schools closed, massive disinvestment. We've lost, Glenville's lost 22% of its population in less than 10 years, the Glenville neighborhood. We're going from 33 wards to 15. The numbers speak for themselves. The proof is in the pudding. Unless there's a real concerted effort to stabilize our neighborhoods, specifically the east side, we can write today's date and time down. We're going to go to 13 wards because we're going to start the redistricting process again right after the census in 2030. So the handwriting's on the wall. I see no benefit to the east side with allegedly committing additional hundreds of millions of dollars to the lakefront. I see no stabilization efforts. I haven't even seen a lakefront plan, Mr. Chairman. If there's a lakefront plan, I don't want to see it. Doesn't the people of Cleveland have a right to see what the lakefront plan is? Nobody has seen it. It's, again, a stealth plan. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in Greater Cleveland Partnership. I'm disappointed in Downtown Cleveland Alliance. There should have been a full court press put on here to keep the Browns in Cleveland, or at least to deny the $600 million. That was pivotal, in my opinion. And now here we are again, faced with, someone tell me, is it $180 million they're requesting out of ODOT to do the roads and infrastructure? Is it 100? I see Mr. shaking. 180 million. What projects in Cuyahoga County or in the city of Cleveland are going to get bumped for them to spend that money for the road work and bridge work around the new proposed stadium? Get ready, my brothers and sisters. Projects that you have long anticipated or lobbied for, they're going to get bumped. They're going to get bumped. You're not going to see them in our neighborhood. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm extremely frustrated with this whole process, what has transpired. Things should have been different. Council should have been briefed. We should have been brought into the fold, and we weren't. And now we're supposed to buy this deal at the 11th hour. And so, Mr. Chairman, as it stands, I'll make my recommendations to staff. But as it stands right now, as presented, I will not vote for it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We have, last on the list is Councilman Joe Jones, and then I'm going to close any closing remarks, and then we'll be closing and moving into finance. Councilman Joseph Jones, and then we'll move to the left.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This has been a very unique season and I agree with some of the comments many of my colleagues have made. It would have been nice if we, the council, was made partnership within this entire process. It would have been nice to know, as it was in the process of negotiations where we were. I haven't heard anyone really talk about why the Haslams left. So what was the contention on the Haslams leaving? A lot of that information really, I haven't really heard anything of substance. Why did they leave the city of Cleveland?
To the councilman through the chair, I don't know all the reasons that they're leaving the city of Cleveland, but my understanding is that they paid, I think, $76 million for a 176-acre site or 170-acre site in Brook Park so that they could have more control of the land, the parking, and mixed-use development surrounding that site. But I don't know all of the
So in
reasons.
negotiations, there was, I mean, I'm quite sure there had to be some kind of sticking points, because at one point, council was led to go out to the Brown Stadium to take a look at a presentation of them being able to build buildings all around the existing site location, and then all of a sudden, silence. So I don't know what happened, and the previous administration, Mr. Chairman, had worked with the feds and the state to put together the $150 million land bridge. What happens to that?
To the councilman through the chair, a couple things I would say in response. One is your experience is similar to ours in that we had been having robust discussions. The administration had been having robust discussions with Haslam Sports Group about a renovation. The city had put forth a financing package that would protect the general fund and still allow the Browns to renovate the stadium. And then they pivoted and decided that they wanted to go to Brook Park to pursue their dome in Brook Park and the ancillary development there. As it relates to the land bridge is still important and maybe actually even more important than ever in order to connect our downtown to the lakefront to see the 50 acres of space redeveloped. So that land bridge
that's
is
still going.
If we could
That's right.
run everything through the chair so that we could have decorum in this conversation.
Mr. Chairman, is that's still in process?
To the councilman through the chair, that is still in process and set to begin construction in 2027.
I see. And Mr. Chairman, you know, again, we were negotiating with the Browns. So you're telling me was there anything that was there in these negotiations? Because see, I'm an optimist. I do believe that you can always make the impossible possible. I believe that, you know, you can always turn the process around. And so, you know, is there any hope here, or is it just, this is just a done deal, and just like one of our colleagues said, this is just a process, and now we just take the vote?
To the councilman through the chair, what I can tell you is that what's in the term sheet has been agreed to between the city and the Haslam Sports Group. And so if council wants certainty about what happens next, a positive vote on the legislation that's before you would give us certainty about the $100 million that has been agreed to under the conditions in the term sheet. That is my only path that I can tell you for certainty about what comes next. If council wants to make amendments to the term sheet, then I am not able to sit here and give you the same certainty that I would about what is in that term sheet
Right,
that's in front of you right now.
And Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Trevisano, I appreciate, I know it was a very difficult process, negotiating and stuff like that. But we're making difficult decisions here, Mr. Chairman, to the administration and to all the viewing audience here. You know, we have a couple of more sports franchises here. I don't want to be sitting here watching the same picture play for those sports franchises as well. So this is the reason why I asked the question, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Trevisano. We should learn something from this lesson. So right now, I don't know what I've learned because I don't know what happened in the negotiations. Why is it that the Browns decided to, at one point, negotiate and then change their minds? So that's something that, you know, I would love to hear the other side of the story, you know, and, you know, why all of a sudden we're in negotiations and then the next thing you know, they're buying land somewhere else. So so what I'm hearing here is that no one sitting at the table could tell me anything at all?
To the councilman through the chair, those I think are questions for the Haslam Sports Group, and I'm not able to speak on their behalf.
So I need to talk to Mr. Jimmy Haslam is what you're saying. So Mr. Haslam didn't express, Mr. Chairman, to Mrs. Trevisano, to the administration or to this council in any kind of way why they were leaving? or why they wanted to leave,
To the
or they
coun-
couldn't get what they wanted, or whatever that was, or is?
To the councilman through the chair, I think there has been a lot of reporting on the Browns and their decision to go to Brook Park. I think there are lots of factors, including site control, including the expediency of being able to build a domed stadium. But I can't speak to all of their kind of internal motives for why they switched.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, and to the administration, it just seems like this is a no-brainer in terms of the decision to be made. I yield the floor, Mr. Chairman, to
Thank you. I'm going to make closing remarks, and then first and foremost, I want to thank the panel for coming today. If there are any follow-up questions you have for any of our panelists, I think all of them were great. I think all of them added value to the conversation. Actually, I learned some things today, and actually I thought was very helpful through this whole conversation. I'm going to say a couple of things, and first of all, give instructions to this council. It's going to be very difficult to renegotiate the terms that were put forth. However, I do believe that there are some tweaks. Mr. Silliman gave us very clear tweaks that the administration even said that they believe that that was not the intent, which means that it should be relatively easy or low-hanging fruit to look at some of the language that we might need to look at. I think that Councilman Charles Slife brought up a very good point about in-use of dollars and making sure that council has the flexibility and that not any outside entities, but council and the administration has the flexibility to make the investments that are important for these dollars when we have things like Ginn Academy, John Hay, JFK, Sheridan Hotel, West Park Regional Station, housing demo, and repair, not to mention what how Councilwoman House Jones said, how do we make sure that we take care of the workers? Many of these are single mothers that are working at these stadiums, and making sure that we have provisions in place to make sure that they are made whole and that they are considered in this conversation, as well as formerly incarcerated individuals. I do not think that that is solely the responsibility of the Browns to cut a deal to do this. I think Councilman Starr actually brought up a good point, which is to my understanding, and Mr. Ebersol can verify this, that they are still committed to provide the jobs and really work on a community benefits agreement to make sure that MB, FB, and Cleveland small businesses benefit, even if this does move into Brook Park. I have talked to people like the Black Contractors Association and Norman Edwards, and we're going to organize and make sure that those things are done. And I'm really going to lean on Councilman Starr to really kind of help outline a lot of those kind of efforts. I will tell you that if I'm hearing this correctly, and people can tell me if I'm wrong, that we don't have a tremendous amount of leverage. That legally, there's not a tremendous amount of leverage. When the state did us the disservice of this $600 million investment and stripped the Modell law, we were limited in our leverage. The leverage point were the lawsuits, and the leverage point is maybe something with the lease. So I understand that this is an issue that's passionate. I understand that people are looking at this from a lens of people want us to fight. I'm like Councilman Casey and Councilman Polinsky. Even though Councilman Casey, I tell people I might be a transplant, but I've been living in this city longer than I've been alive. So them transplant days are over. I'm a Clevelander. So I care about this just as much as anybody else. The thing that I really want to make sure that I help everybody understand is that, this is a deal for future councils. And I think that, to Councilman Polinsky's point, I think that we've been put in situations where we're trying to rectify oftentimes things that happen in past councils. And if we're in a position where we can only delay but not prevent this move, then I think we need to begin to start thinking about what does Cleveland get out of this in order for us to have a net gain instead of a net loss. I think we need to start thinking about how do we pivot in order to do this. Once again, Councilman Casey is the king of quotes this week. He said it's like dating a girl who doesn't want to date you anymore. At some point in time, when do you say, okay, how do we make sure that we end up whole, that this amicable split still make sure that we don't end up in a net negative. So I want to make sure that we think about that, and I have some suggestions on how we can look forward to this. I did want to address what Councilman Mike Polensek said. I agree with you. I don't think that there was a unified effort, and I will tell you, one thing this last 4 years have taught me is that leadership is lonely. Because I will tell you unequivocally, I did talk to the governor several times. I did talk to the state legislature several times, even up to the 24th hour that they were about to vote for this, and lobbied on a Sunday night before they were about to do this at 10 o'clock. I remember it vividly, and basically asked them to raise the cap on the sin tax and also to not pass that $600 million. So there were efforts that happened, but I think jointly it didn't happen, which was unfortunate. And that's your point that I really think you're trying to get to. I regret the fact that this was brought to us in the 24th hour as we're transitioning from a council that I've been proud to lead for the last 4 years and transitioning to a council that we have for the next 4 years. And unfortunately, we're put in a position where we're trying to fit 25 pounds of potatoes in a 5-pound sack within 1 month term. But this goes against, and you got to understand this, to all of the administration and everybody, this goes against everything we've been trying to do to promote our region and have a strong central core. It's the reason why the Cavs moved from Richfield to come to the Central Business District. I don't buy, and I apologize, because for full disclosure, I sit on the North Coast Waterfront Development Corporation. I don't see how this replaces the money that we're going to lose with the Browns. And I have talked to business owners, to Mr. Deemer's point, where the business owners are petrified and believe that the last one out turned out the lights. So this is a very, very critical moment. This is something that I really think what our pivot points are is, you know, if we as a council truly believe that we can't prevent, we can only delay this from happening, we do have to be responsible stewards of the taxpayers' dollars and not just put up a Pyrrhic victory just to say that we stood up against this big corporate juggernaut, but at the end of the day, the citizens of Cleveland are on the hook with an empty building boarded up downtown in about 5 years that nobody will be able to cobble up enough money that costs $30 million today but can potentially rise to $50 million in a couple of years. So I know this is a tough decision. I don't envy, I know people don't care about what I think or how I feel, but I don't envy the position that each council member is in. But this is big boy, big girl stuff right now. This is really a sobering moment. And I'd ask everybody to really look at the tenets of this. Spend your next week doing your homework. I am going to talk with my leadership team and really try to understand if this is something that we think we need to pull the trigger on. I am going to talk about some investments. And I want to keep saying this. I know Mike Polensek might think I'm being biased. I think we got a champion in Ted Ginn Jr. that somehow in this mix, why aren't we talking about how we can maybe keep Collinwood open by making a major investment out of some of these dollars or adding some dollars to this deal in order to have an anchor where we can have a dormitory-style school where a person who is showing that he can drive success for young people in the neighborhood. Why can't we put money into an economic development fund in order to try to make sure that we have investment in some of the catalytic projects throughout our neighborhoods? So when we're asking for more, it's not because we're being greedy, because quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, none of us get anything out of this. Matter of fact, I'm gonna get a headache either way, whether we vote for it or against it. But at the end of the day, I'm a leader, and I believe in making tough decisions when you have to make tough decisions. I'm not trying to lean on anyone. I'm trying to make sure that everybody knows, look at the facts. Mr. Silliman probably has given one of the most rawest testimonies around this conversation that I've heard. He disagrees with this, believes it's going to be horrible for the region and the city. We all believe that this is a bad decision, that, as I told the Browns, because I don't say anything that I can't say to you, that I won't say to them, that I believe that this is going to be a decision that people are going to wake up in 20 years and say, wow, what a huge mistake we all made. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, as Councilman Harrison said, that my friend and mentor used to say, the facts are on the table. I am now pivoting to what can the city get? And I don't think that it's just the Browns that need to come up with that. I think all of you that are here today need to make sure that we have formerly incarcerated people that are going to make a commitment from your organizations that we're going to make sure that we're hiring. single parents, single women especially that we hire, and catalytic projects in our neighborhood. So, yes, we're gonna probably come back with some things. I'm a reasonable council person, but at the same time, I'm a council person that believes that we are simply trying to get the best we can for the city of Cleveland. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'll adjourn this hearing and we'll move towards finance. Thank you all for being here today. Yes, we're gonna take a break and then we're gonna get a restroom break and then we'll go into finance.
The 1997 Leadership Cleveland.
No, I just, I know.
Number 9, I got unsportsmanlike conduct. Number 0, those penalties offset.
So
The score is good.
monitoring the behavior on the field.